What's going on, everybody? We're here. We're live, back again with another Poker Live podcast. My name is Joey Number One, aka Chicago Joey. The last time we had this young gentleman on, it was a very legendary and epic podcast, and we had such good feedback out there from everyone out there that we decided we were going to make the magic happen again out here. And before we get started, guys, I do want to say, we got I've been, ever since I started talking with Barry and I started doing more podcasts again, I've been feeling a little bit more reinvigorated about what I'm doing outside of just playing poker specifically. So we dug back into merchandise. We took out some of the old merch and we put it back up for sale for only 3 more days. The Eat, Sleep, PLO, GTO's a Way of Life, and then more rake, pigeon, stuff like that. And then it's only up for sale for 3 more days. That's it. Then we're redesigning stuff. We're putting stuff out, but that link's in the description below. And then also big shout out, sponsored by Upswing Poker as well, too. Upswing Poker. You guys know I've been friends with Doug, worked with them for a long time, and they just put out this the 6 Max course. I've been kind of digging into it a little bit because I've been playing more 2-card Pot Limit Omaha, aka Nolan Hold'em, and that link will be in the description below too. And let's get into it, man. Joining me today, guys, is a young man who came on, took the poker world by storm. He has, I don't know, man, this man might have more poker wisdom than anyone I've ever spoken to in my entire life. The people in the chat, they loved him. The comments, they had a lot of questions. They had a lot of feedback. They want to know, can he help me pick up more girls? Can he help me become a winning player? Like they all said all kind of crazy stuff. So let's see how much we get to today. Joining me today, not from the bed, unfortunately, guys. I know some people are gonna be disappointed out there, but joining me is Barry Greenstein. Barry, welcome back officially to the podcast.
Okay, good to see you again. So
that's it.
We're done. So
we're done. That's it. Okay.
I guess the only couple things I was thinking of from the last one. Oh, one thing, a small poker thing. I remember I was telling people about playing new games and saying that they could enter World Series of Poker tournaments. And when I said, it's just $1,500, for a lot of people's bankrolls, $1,500 is a lot of money. And so I should have said, your local casino, maybe they have a $50 or $100 buy-in of a game you don't play, and certainly online. That's one of the good things about playing online. You can learn new games online really cheaply, almost for any bankroll. So I didn't want to high roll people with that. There's probably going to be a price point that's right for you, where you can play in a tournament and play a game you don't know and get your feet wet. So that was one thing. Oh, and the other thought I had was, I watched your podcast with Sasha.
Uh-oh.
And I'm glad to see her doing stuff like that because, it takes practice to do poker media, and they ask you a lot of the questions end up being the same. And what happens over time is obviously you get more comfortable the more you do it. And the other thing is for each question, you'll do it and you'll say, I should have said this or that. And then each time you're asked that same question, you get better at answering that same question. So eventually you come up with an answer that you're pleased with. So it's just good practice for someone who's going to be doing this stuff to just keep doing them until you're comfortable, until you say things that you're happy with. So I was glad to see her do that. But one of the things she said that I thought was funny was she said Barry doesn't have ego, which obviously I have ego. We all have ego. What I think she should have said or meant was, I was trying to teach her to take your ego out of the decision making. And so, there are a lot of things that cause me to make bad decisions, and I think I'm aware of a lot of them. Ego is one of them. Like I often tell people, I have this friend, Matt, who says, oh, I want to play in the bigger game. I'll crush those people. I can beat them. And I say, yeah, but, probably you have a better earn playing in this other game than the bigger game. And your bankroll's not that big and you could go broke. And I'll say, but I'm sure your young son will be happy when you come home broke and you tell him, but I was a baller. And it's like these people want to always be ballers. They want to be, whatever. That's fine when you're single, I think. But if you have other people depending on you and family to support, you throw that out the window. I didn't mind going broke when I was young and didn't have anyone else to support. And I had a virtual bankroll. Let's say I could borrow from someone or get money somehow. But once you have a family, you shouldn't. Hopefully you don't think like that. You definitely shouldn't think like that. And you have to start making smart decisions. So, when I was training Sasha on the mental part of the game and management, I almost make it like a board game, like Monopoly. You can't always buy the biggest hotel on the boardwalk. sometimes you have to be more strategic. And so like she was saying, oh, they have this main event at the bike. It was, I don't know, 1670. And she wanted to play. And she said, are you going to play? And I said, no, I'm probably not going to play. And she said, oh, you don't like playing tournaments? I said, no, I don't mind it. And I was going through the thought process. And I said, okay, here I have 10,000 in my pocket. Okay. There's the 2 and 400 game. It's a pretty tough game right now. I may be a favorite, maybe not. There's this 6120 game, and I can cross book with this one guy I think I'm a favorite over. Or I could go to the tournament, invest 1670 in there. But I was trying to tell her, like one of the things as a winning poker player. Now this doesn't apply to everyone, but if you're a winning poker player, you probably should figure out what your average daily. I used to even do it by the hour, but let's say daily take is what you rate to make. And let's just pick a number and say for me it's 1,000. Okay.
Whoa.
Well, then I, obviously when I played bigger, it was bigger. And when I played in the biggest games, it wasn't out of ego. It's where I made the most money, But let's say now that's what I figured to be. Well, that means if I'm going to play that 1670 tournament, I'm also giving up my 1,000 daily wage. So it's really costing me more than that. So I've got to make sure that it's worth more than that to me. Now, I understand, again, if there's some extra value in winning tournaments, most people like that, that may be okay. But for Sasha, who loves tournaments, as you know, I kept telling her, you're not doing the right thing. When she first came out to LA and we were discussing this, she wanted to play No Limit Hold'em. She says, I want to win a big tournament. They're No Limit Hold'em. She says, so I'm going to play the No Limit Hold'em cash games. And I said, your bankroll isn't big enough at this point for you to make decisions like that. You have to, at this point, play where you can make the most money. That's the overriding consideration. And I know you're better against the field in PLO than you are in No Limit Hold'em. Without me, she was going to play no Limit Hold'em. I said, here at the Commerce, they have some really good PLO games, especially during the tournament. I said, I looked at them before you came out here, and they did not look like strong players. Just looking at them. And
bang, bang.
When they're stronger, they're probably people I recognize. Now, after the tournament was over, I'd look at the games again just for Sasha because she lives in Vegas. And I recognized too many of the people. And I texted her, I said, these games don't look that good anymore. They're just not as good. But during the tournament, they were really, really soft. Obviously, recreational players drinking and having a good time. And I said, play PLO. Trust me, it's the right decision. I said, if you want, because your bankroll's short and the game gets bad, you can jump into the No Limit Hold'em, test it out. But your main earn is PLO. Go where you can make money. So she did that, and she did real well with me managing her, surprisingly well. And so again, like a board game, and I was telling with her, where would you want me to invest my money? And then I was also telling her like about getting rest, and that I can make bad decisions like we all can. If you're tired, you find reasons to play longer. You find reasons to play hands you wouldn't normally play. And it's so funny when I'm stuck and tired, I come up with new theories of poker more often when I'm in a game stuck and tired of why I should play a hand a funny way or check raise bluff in a funny situation that I never thought of when I was winning and rested. So, and so knowing that, again, you take your ego out, and that's why you need to be rested before you start your session. You don't know how long it's going to go. It might end up be a 4-hour video session with Chicago Joey. You just never know how long things are going to last. So you want to try to be rested. And obviously being stuck for all of us, we can make bad decisions then. And you should be aware of all your pitfalls. Whatever your weaknesses are, real important to know what they are. And we all have weaknesses. And yes, we all have ego. But try to do your best to be better than your competition at taking those things out, of overcoming those and making sound decisions despite what your weaknesses are.
What do you think your weaknesses are right now, Barry, in your poker career, poker life?
Well, even for myself, like I told you, age has become a weakness. I won't play as long. I stop myself artificially at a certain hour limit. I don't stay up more than 20 hours. Last time I said I don't play more than 20 hours. I really mean I don't even stay up for more than 20 hours because I know my game's going to deteriorate. It's just a function of being older. I told you a lot of times, I saw one of the questions about being staked, playing in the bigger game. I have this all the time where people say, I'll take a piece of you in the bigger, like Ellie Lesser came out here and we were playing 2 and 400. The game was good. Then it didn't look as good to me. And I quit and I went to the other game, the 61-20 or whatever, it was 100-200, whatever it was. And Ellie said, "Oh, if you want, I'll take a piece of you." I said, "It had nothing to do with that." I don't understand this idea of people wanting to have the same amount of their own exposure. Let's say I went down to 100-200, which was a better game. I could have had 50% of myself in the 200-400, which was a tougher game. Why would that make any sense? Just so I can say I'm playing in the bigger game? I don't even understand the mentality of it all. And I've never been someone who wanted to be staked. I always liked being on my own. Anytime you saw me on TV in tournaments, it was my money. I mean, maybe there have been times in my life where I borrowed money to play, but being staked, I always wanted to be able to bluff off all my chips and not have anyone to answer to. Because especially in tournaments, a lot of times you just have to take a stand and put the pressure on and go for it. You can't just sit there like in a cash game. I mean, one of my favorite stories about that is Bobby Hoff, who's not with us anymore. He came in second one year at the World Series of Poker, main event, a long time ago. But a good guy, funny guy. And he and Carl McKelvey used to share bankrolls or something. And Bobby comes back to the hotel room. He lost all their money. And he says to Carl says, "Well, what happened?" He says, "Well, aces. I had aces." And Carl said, "Well, there's nothing you can do with that." And, so Carl accepted. He said, "Well, except for one thing. It was one ace at Binion's, and one of the aces, what was it? I had one ace at Binion's and one ace at the Golden Nugget. Those were my two aces." But anyway, I didn't want to have to answer why I had 3-deuce offsuit and I got all my chips. And I just don't want to have to answer to anyone else. And I was thinking of saying I've never been staked or never had people take pieces of me, but then I realized, no, that's actually not true. I try to avoid it, but it has happened at times. I remember one of the first times was, I told people on the last podcast that the way you get good at any game is play that game exclusively, not by playing the mixed game. And the other thing I told people on the last podcast is someone who is just plays one game, is a specialist, is going to beat someone who isn't a specialist at their game if they're a good player. It's just the way it is, because you just get in tune with the game. Oh, by the way, one other thing about being old, let me digress. I would probably repeat myself. I would say the over-under of repeating myself, saying something I said before on the last podcast, is probably about 3.5 times. You're just going to have to live with that. Like if I was your grandfather or something like that. When you get older,
I was gonna say, I can hear your mind just working. It's like it goes here and then they go there quick. It kind of I'm taking. I'm kind of boom boom boom. It's like mass tabling online poker right now. I'm getting out of these angles, but I'm digesting it though, so it's good.
So I'm gonna repeat myself. Like I said, the over/under I think is around 3.5. As a matter of fact, the over/under me repeating myself in this podcast alone is probably 1.5 or 2. So it's just the way it is. It's just what happens when you get older. But the thing I was thinking of, Sailor Roberts. I saw someone ask if I had stories about Sailor. Sailor was one of the first people. I used to think I was really good at no limit hold'em because I traveled around the country. I was what would be called a road player. I used to keep books on all the notebooks on all the different players I played. Like if I go to Houston, if I go to Indiana, Illinois, I would have a book on all the players of what their steam factors were like. Like if someone just lost a hand, they'd play the next hand. If they were stuck, they go up. And their tells. I used to have just a book of tells on everyone I played with live tells. And I was telling Sasha she should probably do this if she's playing in Vegas and California, whatever, but I'm sure she hasn't listened to me. But anyway, but what happened is I was, doing better than other people. No limit hold'em was a really good game for me. And I probably learned to be good at it more in Houston than Illinois. I never played it till I was about 17 or 18 because it hadn't hit Illinois till then. But anyway, so I'm in California now is where I met Sailor Roberts. Hold'em been made legal, and Sailor came out to California. A lot of Vegas and Texas players came out. But initially we played half limit or half no limit low ball and half no limit hold'em. And I'd gotten very good over the years at no limit lowball because that's all I played. That's what was legal in California. Lowball was legal, Hold'em wasn't. And when these people came out, when we played half and half, I would just kill them at lowball because that was my specialty. And Saylor was saying to me, "You really have to go to Vegas. Those people think," he said, "those people think I'm the best, and you crush me. And when you go and play with Chip and Dahl and all those guys at deuce to seven, no limit, even though I was playing ace to five, they're just not going to know what hit them. You're just going to kill them." And he kept bugging me, "Go out and play." I said, "No, I don't want to go to Vegas. There's too much cheating in Vegas," which is why I stopped playing there. But eventually he and Carl just said, "Come on, we'll take a piece." And I said, "That's not even about the money. I just, like where I am, and my family's here and whatever." But the World Series of Poker came up, and I decided to go back there. And I remember they each had a piece of me. And it was a 25,000 buy-in game, I think. And we put up enough money, we had 25,000. And there's Doyle and Chip. I hadn't met them personally before. Obviously I became eventually friends with both of them. I'm sure they don't even know this story. And they say, they're saying, "Good, this is perfect. There's a seat. Get in that game. You're going to crush that game." And then I said, well, and again, this was before I was playing real big. So 25,000 was a big buy-in for me at the time. And then I said, but wait, there's this smaller game, 5,000 buy-in. It's got this guy named Precious. He was 90 years old at the time, a recreational player, and some other bad players. I said, this is just stupid. Why shouldn't I just spend the money in the $5,000 buy-in game? It's got to be a better deal. But their egos were involved. They wanted to see me because Chip and Dahl were like at the top then. They wanted me to come in and surprise them and take them off. I think that was part of it. But that wasn't even that big a deal to me. And I just thought I should go where I could make the most money. So again, I had 5,000 in the game with Precious. I even have 5 buy-ins instead of 1. Precious, this 90-year-old guy, and I think the reason they called him Precious, he was always hitting on the young girls, and he'd always say, "You're so precious." He's some guy from the South. That's where he got his nickname.
Wait, what year was this, by the way? When is this?
This had to be somewhere in the early 1990s.
Okay.
And so I played the game with Precious. Precious just crushed me. He beat me every hand. I had 5 buy-ins. I lost 5 buy-ins. I lost the 25,000, and they were so mad at me because the whole thing had been to for us to take off the big game, and it didn't happen. And that's one of the last times. But that's another reason I never want people to have a piece of me. They were like upset at me when it was over that I went against their decision. But I still think I made the right decision. It just didn't work out.
What is happening over there? There's somebody banging walls over there. What's going on?
We're in an apartment, and these kids, we're in the downstairs because we were in an upstairs one, but Alex didn't like walking up the stairs all the time. We were in a 2-story one too, and we wanted to get our puppy, who's like on hospice care. She's running on 3 legs, a really old puppy from her family, and we wanted to be in a place that didn't have stairs because the puppy falls down the stairs sometimes. It has trouble with the stairs. So now we're on the bottom floor without stairs. And we found out this is apartment living. There are other people who make noise that are in apartments. That's one downside from not having your own home, is people make noise. And the dog they have barks a lot. You might hear that in the background too.
Yeah, I can.
The lady goes to work and locks this dog up in the bathroom, and then the thing barks. Our dog doesn't bark at all. She's too old to bark. But anyway, going back to poker. You hear the dog? Going back to poker, Saylor Roberts was the first one. I always try to learn by watching what other good players do. And that's how, again, that's the main way you watch poker. And I'd been kind of king of the hill and beating people up at Hold'em. And then Saylor came around, and I was really like what you call a basher. I would raise big before the flop, bet on the flop, fire 3 barrels, try to bulldoze people, bluff every hand through. And that was my style. And according to the way people play now, I certainly would overbet a lot and just put the fear of people that the money's going in. And Saylor played very differently than I did. He would bet an amount that was like, if you figured it out mathematically, because again, I'm good at mathematics, it was an amount that would make it wrong for people to call to their draws, but entice them to call. He would never overbet. He'd bet an amount that was kind of game theoretically the right bet, if you know what I mean.
Ooh. Oh, I
And
do.
so,
Okay.
and so I would say, boy, that's really kind of esoteric. And here I thought I was really good, and this guy's better than I could say mathematically, no doubt, this guy's better than I am. And so I learned something. Saylor was a really, really good player. He died because of drugs and liver went, whatever. But to give you an idea of Saylor's life, I know people like stories. He won the World Series main event. One of the last times it was winner take all. I think he said it was 270,000. I might get it wrong. People can look it up. And he told me he never played another hand of poker until October when he was busted. He had gone through all that money without playing poker, just on girls and drugs. So that was
what? What the hell was he doing? What is he? What was he doing with the girls? Traveling around the world and buying them?
Yes.
Cars or something?
No, he'd just stay in a room in Vegas, and he would hit on all these girls. And like one of the stories was he told me he liked this girl who worked in the cage they probably played at the Mirage. And so he liked this girl, and he asked her out, and she turned him down. And the next day he bought her like $1,000 watch.
No.
And said, "This is a gift I want to give to you." And she said, "That's very nice." He said, "Will you go out with me?" And she said, "No." And she said, and she was nice enough to say, "I don't need the watch." He says, "No, it's a gift. I want to give it to you, even if you don't go out with me." Well, it ends up, according to Saylor, he bought her a watch each day for the next 7 days. It took a week of watches, and they kept getting nicer and nicer. And then she finally went out with him. I mean, Saylor, went through his money. He was really hard on money. I remember he called me up like 3 a.m. and he says, I'm at Garden City. I lived in San Jose then. It was this place. He said, "Is there any way you can get some money to me? I need, I don't even know how much, 500, 1,000, whatever he needed." And I said, "Really? You can't wait till tomorrow?" He said, "Well, it's not for me. It's for this girl who she's broke and needs money to play." That's so you can imagine with that mindset, he did go through money very quickly. Girls were his part of his downfall, girls and drugs. But he was a great guy.
Damn, the original out of line. Yeah, people in chat saying he was pretty out of line. He was hooker. He liked hookers and drugs before what happened with the girl? So you bought her a watch 7 days in a row, allegedly, and then so did the girl stick? What happened with the girl? That was it?
I have no idea. Saylor was pretty destructive to himself, so who knows what happened. He ended up having to do, it's really sad, he had to do like 9 months in jail. He was did the phone stuff for Slim, who's dead now. They had a booking operation. And Slim always said, "Don't worry, anything happens to you, I'll take care of it." And then they got busted. Saylor ended up doing jail time. Slim acted like he didn't know him, didn't help him out. So Slim was not one of my favorite people. I had a few run-ins with Slim. Slim, Saylor, and Doyle would drive around Texas. They were road players driving through Texas. And they used the same bankroll. I don't know if they played in the same game. I don't know how they did things back then. But Slim would hustle them in all sorts of ways. Like I remember one of the times, and this is coming from Doyle, they're driving to somewhere, and Slim says something like, "Oh, it's about 25 miles to Amarillo," or whatever. Is that the name of a city in Texas? I think it is. I don't know. And they said, "No, it's not. It can't." And he said, "Well, I bet you can look on the car. I'll bet you it's like, I'll take the, he'd say, I'll take, let's say the under 25. And they're saying, "No, it's further than that." And what they saw was a sign that they didn't tell Slim, I guess. They passed a sign that said 30 miles to Amarillo. And Slim's betting under 25. So of course they end up, I guess maybe the little bit of larceny at the airport, they end up making the bet. What they didn't know is the day before Slim had moved that sign. He had taken it out of the crowd and moved this sign. So it was really like, they were really like 15 miles away, but Slim had taken the 30-mile-an-hour sign and moved it, or 30 miles away sign, moved it to 15 miles away from the town, and then bet them on it, part of their bankroll. So he would come up with some hustling his own partners.
So wait, how did they verify how far away they were? Did they just go with the sign?
They were on the car. They said, "Okay, it's so many miles on the car now. Let's see who's right." When we get into town, that's how they did it. And Slim had moved the sign.
This guy, the original angler over here, man. My Anglin Amarillo. What was this? It was Amarillo Slim, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Anglin Amarillo, man. That makes sense. So okay, so I kind of let me kind of talk. Okay, so now with poker and the angling and those kind of stuff, angling and that type of stuff is looked very down upon. But it sounds like there was a lot of angling and maybe cheating, colluding. It sounds like a lot of that stuff was going on for a year back in the day, and kind of in the poker world and in the gambling world in general.
Yeah, it was the way things were done in these casinos. As a matter of fact, I came out, I can't remember, did I tell this story the last time? I first came out to Vegas when I was 18, and then I came out again when I was like 20, my lower 20s, where I was already a pretty good professional winning player. And stop me if I've told the story on the last thing. I sit down in a game, and it's 1974, actually, because that was when there was a recession, like 74, 75. Money was real tough. I sit down in the game, a 7-card stud, and my friend who I came out with, Rick Janoffs, for people who know him, he plays in Vegas. He was my attorney also. He whispers in my ear, "You're sitting with the best players in Vegas. That's like the toughest lineup I've ever seen." And they were about to deal. And I said, "Oh," and I pulled my ante back. And when I pulled my ante back, one of the players says, stops there, says, "Stop." And then just says, "No reason to deal." Because they didn't know me. They all knew each other. It was 7 guys I didn't know when I sat up and there was a seat open. It was just 7 guys who'd been sitting there pretending like they're playing. A new face sits down and they tell the dealer to deal. My friend whispers in my ear, that's the whole scene. And then they're not going to deal a hand unless some live one sits down. That's how tough money was then, and how tough it was for them. And then later I went to the Stardust. It might have been that trip or another trip, but there was just rampant cheating. The house is on the cheating. They bring in cold decks. And I got in a situation where people were playing partners against me where it was obvious. And I called them out on it and got in a big argument. And then they said, "We need to talk to you." And they said in in those days, Vegas was scarier than scary. It's not a scary place now. Like you might end up in the desert, type of scary. And they said, "You don't understand. We saw you play. We know you're a good player. The way it works here is we take off the people, the recreational players, whatever they call them, who come into town. That's the way it works. And you can be with us or you can not be with us. You're not going to like not being with us. Okay. So you have a choice. You can join with us or not." And I said, "No, I'm not going to join with you." And after that incident where they basically tried to cheat me, I just said, "I'm not going to play poker in Vegas anymore." I went back to Vegas several times to play blackjack and to go to shows and things like that, take a girl out there. But I just said, there's too much cheating. And I promised myself at the time, I'm not going to play poker in Vegas. And what happened was in about 78 or 9, the World Series of Poker main event became kind of a known thing. You'd hear about it in the news. And at my own poker game, some guy said, "Hey, let's have $1,000 buy-in." They didn't call it a sit and go because that word didn't exist then. We had 10 people play for $1,000, and the winner goes to the World Series of Poker. And I said, "I'm not going to play poker in Vegas. There's too much cheating." And they said, and I said, "I'm just telling you, if I win, I'm keeping it. So don't act like it's a deal. I'll be in because you need 10 people, but you better be rooting against me because I'm not going." And I ended up winning, and I ended up not going. And which, obviously didn't make me any friends there. But then finally what happened is the no limit games dried up. That was my best game. Limit poker started coming in. Again, another thing I told people, I'll never play limit poker. But I ended up having to play limit poker because that's how I had to support myself. But I went to the World Series, I think 1991. And the very first table I was at, the flop came Queen 9-9. And it went check, 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 check. The blinds were 50 and 100. And $100 bet on the river. And the other guy called by looking at him funny, and then called. And the guy who bet showed 4 9s and said, I had to bet it. And the other guy now showed, and he didn't even hide it, showed queens full. They each had like 20% of each other and had an agreement not to bet each other. So one of the first hands I remember at the World Series of Poker, to give you an idea if cheating was still there, was two guys checking down top full against bottom quads. And one guy being upset the other for betting on the river. And so, yeah, there was cheating in Vegas. People don't know. Eric Drake and Doyle had this idea of opening an honest poker room. Because in those days, there were peepholes in the ceiling. Management was in on the cold decks brought in, marked. Everything you could imagine was done. And that's how it just was in the high stakes game. It just wasn't real poker. But Doyle, part of it was Doyle was a little bit self-serving. Doyle was becoming the best player and had this idea, if poker could just be honest, I could win a lot of money. So he didn't want the cheating that was going on. So he said, isn't there a way we can open an honest card room? And they did. And although it's kind of funny, when they went to get the license, they get interrogated by these older gentlemen on the gaming board. Hopefully the gaming board's better than it was now, but people totally clueless, okay, about poker. And before they grant the license to Eric, the guy said, I only want to ask you one question. Is there going to be check raising allowed in your club? And Eric didn't know what to say. And he said, well, and he like hesitated. He says, because that breaks up, that really gets people mad. I don't think it should be allowed. And the guy, of course, didn't know much about poker. And Eric just said, we'll look into it. And then he got the license. So that'll tell you how knowledgeable the gaming board was at that time in Las Vegas about poker. But they opened up, I think it was at the Silverbird or something. They opened up the first honest high stakes card games where they told everyone, they knew all the cheaters. And they just say, you're not allowed to mark cards here. Nothing and other stuff. We'll bar you. And a lot of the cheaters were bad players. They actually, the other players, the good players wanted the cheaters to play there because they weren't good poker players. That was part of the reason they were cheaters. And they just, Jimmy Shahadi's the name that I think there were a lot of guys, they just said, you can't cheat if you play here or you're barred. And they finally had a legitimate high stakes poker that was honest. And obviously Doyle did real well. That's why he still, was a good thing. It was definitely a good thing for Doyle. Anyway, so yeah, lots of cheating.
When did that change? Like when did this open cheating and all this kind of stuff, when did that start to change in Vegas?
Well, that was 1978. Like even again, I always say Benny Binion was the best casino operator. Did I tell you a Benny Binion story?
You did not, but I've done a lot of research on Benny Binion, so I kind of know, like, he came from Texas. He was in the mob. He kind of like got his life threatened, so he left Texas to come to Vegas, and then like, I don't know, it was all kind of a crazy story how it all started. But yeah, I like dove deep into the history of World Series of Poker, and it was fascinating stuff.
Yeah, his son Jack is really, really good too. Jack did real well, but Benny was a real character. Benny he had this philosophy that we don't see anymore. Is I'll give people a fair game if they'll gamble at my place. And originally in craps, you could bake your bet $100 and bet 100 what they call behind the line, where you get true odds. And the initial bet, you don't get true odds. I don't know if people understand it. And then they went to like, you could get double odds was a big deal, and then triple, and then more time. Anyway, someone put up a thing 10 times odds. Benny says, okay. Or someone did triple. Benny said, we'll do 10 times, which made it so his edge is less and less. And then one of the accountants said, when are you going to stop? We can't make money off this. He says, when are you going to stop? He says, I'll just let them bet odds. I won't even let it. He says, his philosophy was, if you get people in my joint, there's lots of things going into my joint where we'll make money one way or the other. And he just wanted the people to play in his place. That was his whole philosophy. So he catered to all the high stakes players, which you don't see anymore. We were talking about catering to high stakes players. It doesn't really happen anymore. Benny was just always wanted to make sure all the gamblers played in his place. And Benny, one time, he's in his office. Some guy from probably Texas calls him up, says, boy, Benny, I got to work. I really wish I could shoot some dice. And Benny says, well, actually, my office is right near the dice table. This phone, I got this portable thing. I could actually go to the dice table. I could put a bet down for you. He says, you're kidding me. And he says, no, really. He says, what do you want to bet? And the guy's a high roller. There's a lot of money in those days. He says, I want to bet 5,000 on the pass line. Benny says, well, I can put it down for you. I'll put 5,000 down. So Benny says, you got 5,000. Your number's an 8. There's a 4. There's a 5. There's a 11. 8. You won. You got 5,000. And the guy says, can I bet another 5,000? Benny says, yeah, I'm kind of busy, but okay, whatever. Puts 5,000 down. The guy gets another number, rolls whatever. He wins again. And then Benny says, I really got to go to a meeting. I can't do anything else. He says, but you can come if you want to pick up the 10,000, just, come next weekend then and, pick up the 10,000. Guy comes in the next weekend, picks up 10,000, loses 100,000. And then someone says, boy, Benny, you're lucky that guy won 10,000. Benny said, what are you talking about? I was just in my office. There was no craps table.
What?
Benny just was pretending to the guy that the guy had the number, before all these comps and things like that. Benny just knew if the guy had 10,000 on account, he'd make a trip out to pick it up. So Benny was a pretty clever guy.
What? I was going to say, I feel like where did this story come from? Who told this story? Where does it start at?
Benny.
He told the story. Okay, oh man. Okay.
No, Benny. Well, another thing Benny did is cheating was so rampant in all the casinos in the poker. They put in Benny one time, and they had something like a buzzer or something on the guy's leg where they have a peephole, and they buzz if the guy's got it, you beat. If the guys get you beat, you get a buzz that, hey, we see his hand, it's got you beat, you have to fold. Okay? And they let Benny, who wasn't that good a player, sit in. And Benny picks up 2 kings and no limit hold'em. And he raises the guy, re-raises, and Benny gets a buzz. Okay? And Benny ends up going all in, and the guy has aces, and they buzz Benny, and then there's an argument, and they pull Benny up and say, Benny, what are you doing? Didn't you feel the buzz? He said, yeah, but I can't lay down 2 kings.
Kings are hard to fold. I mean, come on.
How am I going to lay down 2 kings?
But listen, say I'm going to put a gun to your head, I'm going to shoot you if you call here and lose. I'm not folding 2 kings either, so I get where he's coming from.
Actually, I got another story about the other, I think, possibly greatest poker room manager he's now with us, either Marko Trappin. He's the one who started Bay 101. I used to play in the No Limit Club called the Cameo Club in Palo Alto. It got closed down, eventually moved to Bay 101. People know about the Shooting Star tournament he started. Mm-hmm. And I used to go there every year until Marko died. But when No Limit Hold'em first became legal in California, we were playing at his old club, the Cameo Club. And we had this guy, Charlie Tooney, he owned go-kart tracks, made a lot of money. He was a player everyone liked to play with. And so Charlie, it's the first week of No Limit Hold'em. And Marko was playing in the game. We didn't have enough players. Not that many people knew No Limit Hold'em. It just started, even though it was probably it had been my best game. So I had to start playing poker again, even though I'd been working. My wife called me up at the office saying, what are you doing working at the office? They're playing No Limit Hold'em. How can you not be? Because she was a poker player too. So I'm probably one of the few people that have his wife screaming at him for working instead of playing poker. But anyway, so I came down, played some No Limit Hold'em. Anyway, Charlie raises, Marko re-raises. And now Charlie says, I've already gotten kings beat by aces twice this week. If I get him beat again, I'm going to stop playing No Limit Hold'em. I'm going back to low ball. And Charlie had just re-raised Marko, and Marko shows me 2 aces, and boom, right in the muck. Throws the 2 aces away. He didn't want to take any chance of Charlie not playing No Limit Hold'em anymore.
What the hell's happening, man? I'm trying to think. I'm thinking about this. It sounds like even back in the day, the players were very aware of kind of making sure that the bad players have a good experience, or kind of getting those bad players to keep coming back. And I think it's something that you see these days talked about, is that players don't know how to treat the other recreational poker players. And kind of the whole private game things that happen here in Vegas at the Aria, and I think it's mainly Aria right now. And a lot of, they say the private games there are created because a lot of these recreational players don't want to play with the professionals because they don't know how to really, they make the experience not very happy. They don't make it good. They don't make it happy. They make it pretty fucking miserable. So then they decided, okay, let's try to get these guys in some sort of private game. And there might be different reasons exactly why the private game ecosystem got started here in Vegas. But it sounds like that you were always pretty aware of the dynamic of wanting to treat the bad players in a good way and kind of keep them coming back.
Well, yeah, that was part of being a professional poker player. Actually, you just remind me of that Aria gate that's kind of semi-private, right? I tried to get in it once, they wouldn't let me. The They don't let certain people in. Bobby Baldwin and David Chesnov, who's like the lord of the poker players, and some of the other people. You know who Ozzy87, I think, was his online name?
I remember the name. I don't think I ever met him, but I remember the name. Yeah.
He's a nice kid. Well, he had been doing well. He'd been playing in the mixed game with us, like a 3 and 600 mixed game at the Aria. He'd been doing okay. And then he stumbled into this other game, which was in the other room, and he wanted to get in. And he like had the whatever 100,000 buy-in, and he said, "No, I want a seat." And they said, "It's you can't have a seat there." And Ozzy's saying, "Well, why not? A seat's open. You can't like tell me I can't play." And then Chesnov comes over to me and he says, "Your buddy's about to get in trouble. Your young buddy's about to get in trouble. You better let him know. He can't like tell us what we can do." So I said, "Ozzy, we were again, like a lot of the younger players, I don't want to say a mentor, but it's like you see how I am with the younger players." I said, "Ozzy, let me explain something to you. You see that guy Chesnov who you were arguing with? If you really pressed it too much and we ended up finding your body in the desert, he's the guy who's going to be defending the guy who kills you." I said, "You get the picture? You really don't want to cross some of these people. If they say you can't do something, don't argue it, okay?"
So what do you think about the current ecosystem out here with this whole semi-private? I mean, it basically private. I mean, it is semi-private. It's not private if a guy comes there and he's not a good player. He's a fun player, an action player. That guy's allowed to play. But what do you think about just that sort of thing going on here in a casino? Because it doesn't seem like that has been the case in the past, but this is sort of a new thing over these past few years where it's just openly in the casino and players try to get in and there's no, and then they get back and forth on Twitter and they're arguing with the poker manager and that type of stuff going on.
The way we do it in California is sometimes we'll have a set lineup of, for mixed games, it's usually 6 or 7 players. For no limit hold'em and PLO, it's 8 or 9 players. And they have basically their home game taken to the casino. And it starts out like that. And then if a seat opens up, then anyone can sit down. That's kind of the way they do it. But you can't crack the starting lineup no matter when you show up. If you got to the casino and put your name up 4 hours earlier, you still aren't going to be in the starting lineup. And I think that's probably a good compromise for that situation, that you can sometimes get a seat, but they brought their game there to the casino. So that's not so bad. So occasionally you get a seat that way.
But their game is you're not going to get a seat no matter. You're not getting in the game.
Yeah, no, their game you're not going to get in the game. Well, I remember one time we're playing 7-handed, which is what we played because we played mixed games. And then Bobby Baldwin comes over and he says, "Hey, can you make a seat for me?" And I remember Steve Z, Steve Zoltau, the name.
Yeah, I know the name, yeah.
Yeah, older guy than I am. And he's saying, "Well, I thought we play 7-handed." And Bobby says, "Well, I think we're going to make it 8-handed for me." And it might have been at the Bellagio. I can't remember where. And so anyway, of course we wanted Bobby to play. And Bobby used to be a great player. It's not even that he wasn't. But it's always the case, someone who plays only occasionally isn't going to stay sharp. So, obviously Bobby at the highest levels, he'd be a guy we'd want in the game just because we're playing every day and he's not sharp. But anyway, so the next day, so Bobby plays. The next day, Steve Z comes in late. They're playing 7-handed. Bobby's in the game. And Steve say, "Oh, well, I'm glad we make it 8-handed sometimes. Can you give me a seat?" And Bobby says, "We play 7-handed. And Steve said, "But yesterday you made it 8-handed. And Bobby said, "Well, when you get your own casino, you can make it 8-handed.
And not surprising, Bobby is connected to the game of the Aria too. I mean, I don't. Maybe it's like I don't know. It makes sense. I definitely understand the merit for having the game and why the game goes on, and I understand why pros would be upset they can't get into the game. But I don't know.
In all fairness, there are a lot of situations like this that if you did allow pros into the game, there wouldn't be a game anymore because then the recreational players wouldn't play. You'd have a bunch of pros just staring at themselves. So I don't think it's as sinister as it appears, because that's how there is a game, because they have a game that's made, that's set up so the recreational players feel they have a fighting chance. And if they got to where they were big underdogs, a lot of these guys, they're not stupid. One of the things that people always forget is they might see some wealthy guy and think he's just stupid. He got that money not by being stupid. He's good at what he does. Whether he's a doctor, a businessman, he's really good in his craft, or we wouldn't see him able to play poker that high. So he realizes that when he's an underdog, and he probably doesn't like losing money. And he wants to be in a situation where he can play against other people who play as infrequently as he does and where he has a fighting chance. Now, that isn't everyone, like Jerry Buss and a guy, Martin, who plays at the there's some wealthy guys who like the competition. Jerry Buss used to say, I can't, he owned the Lakers, if you know who Jerry Buss is. He said, well, I can't get on the basketball court and play with Magic and Kareem. It'd be ridiculous. But I can play with the best players in the world. To him, that was like, he used to equate that to the same thing. Now, I don't put basketball players on the same levels as professional athletes, but there was a poker boom where some people did. But Jerry loved playing with the best competition. And Yosh Nakano, who used to arrange a lot of the games here in LA, called Jerry up one time and says, Jerry, we have the best game we've ever had. We have this guy, so-and-so. They're all terrible players. You're going to be one of the best players in the game. And Jerry says, well, I don't want to play in that game. I want to play with the best players. So Jerry refused to play in the game because it was all bad players. Again, his reason for playing poker is different than mine and yours.
Have you ever thought about doing something like that yourself? Because I know a lot of professional poker players now, and by a lot, I mean, actually not a lot, a few who have a more well-known or a higher profile. They have home games where they basically organize the lineups, and the lineups of the players that they come and play these aren't very good players. Have you ever thought about doing something like that with the games that you play in, rather than, I guess, going to the casino and playing in the normal game that you play right now, where there's other really good players in that game?
Well, you're confusing me. What would I be doing?
You would be organizing your own private game with players that you choose, and you would choose players who are all probably pretty bad at the game.
No, I've never been, been much. Part of the reason I'm a poker player is the freedom. I don't want to organize things. I don't do that. In college, I did. I organized the game. First time I had to look down the barrel of a gun, actually. What happens, this guy, when I first got to college, this guy ran this game. He would rake the game and serve bologna sandwiches, okay? And the thing he did that even pissed me off even more, he would have some like guys on Social Security in the game and lend them the amount of their Social Security check and then meet them at the mailbox when the check arrived.
Peace.
Donnie was his first name. And the only reason I'm not saying his last name is he might still be in Vegas for all I know. But anyway, so Donnie ran this game, and I said, this is ridiculous. And I, just like Doyle, telling the story about Doyle, I was a good poker player. I just wanted a fair game, and I didn't want these old guys being taken off like that. And I just said to people, I'm going to run my own game. My girlfriend set it up. We had prime rib and lobster served. It was a $50 sit-down fee. I gave my girlfriend the money. She bought the groceries, and she cleaned up. She made the meal, kept all the money. And $50 was a good deal, where you just paid that to sit down, you played, and the buy-in for the game was a few hundred, I don't know what. But well, what happened was, and I told these retired guys, I said, you can come over to my apartment and you can have the food. You don't have to play if you don't want to, and there's always food in my refrigerator, whatever. Come over. They come over. If they didn't have money to play, they just horse around, talk with everyone, have a good time. And before I get to what Donnie did, my girlfriend actually liked it. My girlfriend's major was English literature. She went to graduate school in English literature. She was born on a farm. She had never been around men talking like this, the language of poker, calling each other, names and the graphical ways they talk about women. And she was a writer. She would sit in the other room and just write what the poker players would say and then use it for dialogue in her writing. Because this was like a new world to her. She loved it. She would have paid to actually get this, but she was getting paid to get her dialogue for her writing. So it was kind of funny for her, my girlfriend Joyce. So anyway, going back to Donnie. Anyway, one day at my apartment, Donnie shows up at my game and he says, Barry, I'm going to have to take you out. You cost me my livelihood. and he's got a gun. And now when I was in my 20s, I wasn't, I don't even know, I might not have even been 20 yet. I was totally fearless. I would fight anyone as long as they were bigger than me. You know, I don't know, very different mindset. By the way, it all changes, just so you know. If you think you're fearless and not afraid of anything, when you have children. Now I'm afraid of everything, okay? I still, just saying that, see a basketball rolling out on the street after I played with my young kid and my older son, and Joey, my older son, as the ball rolls out and I see a car and my young 4-year-old, 3-year-old son about to run to the street, gives me shivers, okay? That he might have run to the car and I'm screaming and running after him. So you get to where you're afraid of everything, okay? But in those days, I was afraid of nothing. And I remember saying to him, I said, Donnie, you better pull the gun. You better shoot, because I'm going to beat your ass, or whatever I said. I was just totally afraid wasn't afraid. And the funny thing is, years later, here's this guy pulled a gun on me and threatened to kill me. Years later, he became a dealer at the World Series of Poker. And poker was big, and now I was a big shot, you know, a big name. And I get to his table, and there he is dealing. And of course, my first thought is, hey, you pulled a gun on me and threatened to shoot me. And he's there saying, Barry, tell all the people that we're friends. I knew Barry back in the day and stuff like that. Here's this guy tried to shoot me. So, yeah, Donnie.
So what happened in the game? So did you give him back his game, or what happened?
No, I ran the game. I don't know what he did. Maybe he found new old people to take off and take their Social Security check. No, I ran the game for years. As long as my girlfriend was there, I ran a fair game where people got good food. And all my friends, I always let all my friends in college know that my refrigerator's full. I made money from poker and always had plenty of sandwich, you know, roast beef and whatever anyone wanted. People who were broke poker players knew they'd come to my apartment, get fed. You know, life was good.
So not considering doing that again anytime soon, huh?
No, I'm not the running a game type of person. I'm just looking for a good game to play in. I'm looking for the freedom. Play when I want. Don't play when I don't want to. You know, that's part of being a poker player, is that freedom is really what you go for.
Somebody running water in the background, or am I just hearing things?
I think that is a shower that just got turned on.
Oh, okay. I'm like, am I going crazy right now? Okay. No, there was something you mentioned a while ago, which was about how when you went on the road, you had a notebook where you would write things down about players. It was like your live notes. And I remember now that you had a website, I believe, where you would rank different categories for each players. You would have it'd be like Doyle Brunson. You had like fucking 20 categories for these players.
Yeah,
and I remember, I remember watching that, and I was like, I should do that for players too. I just found that was like completely fascinating, because I remember there were so many players that you had written down on there. Is that still up, or is this still?
You know, people get upset at me. What happened on my website? What happened is I'd have other people run the website, and eventually we didn't pay the whatever you have to pay, and it went down. And then PokerStars took it over. They wanted me writing blogs on it.
Oh boy.
And then I was writing blogs, whatever, for PokerStars on it. And obviously they'd advertise PokerStars on my website. And then eventually they said, we're not going to do that anymore, which was good, because they wanted me to do more of that than I wanted to. They gave the website back to me, but we had a hard time doing the transfer, and we gave up. And then other people have since taken it. And PokerStars even one time found out someone else owned my domain. And they said, they bought it back from them to get it for me, went through legal stuff to do it. And eventually, if poker was big like it was, maybe I would have kept that up. But once poker stopped being so big, I lost interest. So I have no idea what happened to it.
Do you still have the rankings on there anywhere?
No, not at all. But the funniest thing is Ted Forrest. I'd rank people on all the different forms of poker. And I didn't think much of Ted's no limit hold'em game. I probably had him like as a 3. That was one of the things. But he was real good at stud and stud 8 or better. And it really made Ted mad. And he said, well, if I play in a tournament and win it, a no-limit tournament, will you increase my ranking? I said, yeah, I'll bump it up a point. He ended up winning like a WPT. He won he might even win a World Series tournament. He won some other thing. Every time he won, he would text me, I go up a point. He might end up in 11 by the time it was over. He did so well in no-limit hold'em tournaments. But what are you going to do? If the guy keeps winning tournaments, you got to bump him up a point. By the way, the top was 10, but Ted kept getting an extra point every time he won a tournament.
So who was one of the best players on there? Who are the best players on according to the rankings? Because I remember there was not just like 3 categories. There was a lot of categories for each player on there. I don't like. Yeah, it was pretty. It was pretty.
Well, I tried to make sure nobody got insulted, and even I had a song associated with each player, and I had to make sure it was a song that the guy was okay with. I remember eventually I did like Twan. I remember I got the song "Crazy" by Gnarls Barkley. I think we finally settled on because Twan was crazy. So yeah, songs with everyone, everything like that. Chip obviously would be high ranked. Chip was a great player. Doyle, Phil Ivey, all the people that did well in the top game would obviously get highest rankings. But I also had a ranking for tournaments as well as cash games. So you could have very divergent rankings for someone as a cash game player versus a tournament player. So obviously the tournament players I'd rank high. If they did well in tournaments, the cash game players I'd rank high in cash games.
Yeah. So okay, I don't know how to say this name. Jujura D says that website was legendary. Totally forgot about it. Remember surfing it. Sam Farha had a 9 out of 10 tilt factor, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Although Sammy was better than people think. I actually wanted at some point to talk about Gus because you had him on your show. But Sammy is one of those guys. Although one of the last big pots of PLO I lost was I had aces with something. We got in this big PLO, 4-handed PLO game, me, Chip, Patrick Antonius, and Sammy, 4-handed. Probably like 1,000, 2,000 blinds, so pretty big game.
Okay.
And I used to, in PLO, always try to get the seat to the right of Sammy. Everyone else wanted to get the seat to the left. I'd slow play everything into him because Sammy just raised all the time. I could trap people in and then put the cap on it. But anyway, so I'm sure I was to Sammy's right, which is where I always like to be. And I slow played my aces into him as I always did. Chip raised and I called. Sammy popped it up. Chip called. And now I potted. And I mean, they knew I probably had what I had, but Sammy didn't fold. And Sammy just said, well, I guess we got to get the rest of it in, which at that point ended up being like a few $100,000. We got the money in. I mean, the total ended up being, 250, 300, I can't remember what. And I even showed, of course I had aces, and Sammy didn't like to show his hand, but he just said I had queen. He just said, well, you got me, I have queens. And the Chip said, I folded queens. And of course, Sammy had queen, 7-4 with no suit. And of course, 7s and 4s won this big pot. And the worst thing of all, so I've lost $1 million twice. I saw somebody ask, that was one time I lost 1.2 million in that game. Sammy was the only winner. We all got crushed. Sammy won like 6 million.
What?
Yeah. He won a lot. 4 to 6
hours. What?
Sammy crushed the game. And Sammy short-handed PLO was pretty tough. And people like ring game, maybe not so much, but Sammy's a lot tougher than people think. I'll tell you another Sammy story after that. But and the worst part is I wasn't even supposed to play that day. What happened was I went over to the Bellagio. My hairstylist.
Stop it. What are you talking about? Stop it.
I was trying to pick up this girl. She used to cut.
Stop it. What the hell?
Listen, I don't get my hair styled, but cut, and maybe I used to get my hair dyed or something. I asked her if she wanted to go see a show at the Bellagio, like the O show or whatever. And she said, yeah. I said, why don't we meet at 8 o'clock? Well, I go there at 8 o'clock. The girl's not there. I'm looking around. I wait till 8:30. And these are probably the days she probably didn't have a cell phone or whatever. So anyway, there's no girl. 8:30, I see them playing, and I see how bad they're playing. And I said, I got to get in. I get in, and I lose this money. I lose 1.2 million. And this was at a point where, 1.2 million. There are points where I could afford it. This was a time where I was starting to get shorter on my cash bankroll. And, man, I was so upset about this. And I didn't even, maybe the next time I came back to Vegas, I went there and saw the girl. I think I went there and I said, you stood me up. What'd you do? Whatever. Or actually, I think I went back and I asked about her and she didn't work there anymore. And these girls there, they knew she liked me, and they said, no, she moved to California. She doesn't live there. I was playing at the conference one day. This girl shows up. Says, hey, you remember me? I said, yeah, of course I remember you. The biggest poker loss of my life was you standing me up on that date. I lost one, I said, I probably didn't even tell her when I lost because she probably wouldn't believe it. And then she said, which made it even worse, I showed up. She said, I was there. She said, I went to the Bellagio, but I maybe went to the wrong place. I didn't see you. I waited around a little while and then I left. So that was her side of the story. And then she said, well, you want to go out? And I said, no, I'm really upset about what happened. I said, there's no way I'm ever going to have a good thought about what happened that day.
So was this one of the last times you played PLO?
That's the biggest, last time I played that big, for certainly PLO. I mean, I played PLO a lot in mixed games. Obviously, I play PLO tournaments, which I love. PLO tournaments are probably my favorite form of tournaments because in PLO, certain amount of robbing. PLO tournaments, you steal. You don't win PLO tournaments by having the best hand. Anytime someone doesn't have the nuts and you think they will fold if they don't have the nuts, you just fire. And so stiff ace bluffs, maybe they're good in regular PLO, but in tournaments, they're another level. And you just put pressure on people. If the board changes, you just fire. And so PLO tournaments I have a bracelet in PLO. I'm not claiming to be a great PLO player, but I do know how to rob from people. And PLO is probably the best game to do it in, I think, of any game. And PLO 8, if you look at my record, I go deep every time in that too, because very similar where, you learn who you can play off a hand and who you can't. And it's all you have to know is who you can force to fold is all you want to know in a PLO tournament. But another thing about Sammy, to give you an idea, people always disparage Sammy's game. And one of the reasons they disparage him is they see him playing No Limit Hold'em on like the TV shows. Right. He doesn't play No Limit Hold'em. He's not really good at No Limit Hold'em. But shorthanded PLO, he's a tough guy to play against. And if you don't think so, David Benjamin, I used to think was maybe the best. David and Patrick are really good. And David, I used to think was the best. And Sammy played David heads up and beat him. People had a piece of it, beat him out, let's say, $1 million. Other people had a piece. And Sammy played Phil Ivey. And they played to a draw. And finally, and by the way, he beat Patrick too. Oop. He just went off for a second. He beat Patrick too. And finally, they wouldn't play Sammy heads up. They played him half PLO and half Omaha 8 or better. Like 4 and 8,000 Omaha 8 or better. Where he was definitely a dog. And even in those matches, he didn't come. I know 3 of the guys he played who are all way better at PLO than I am, which is Patrick, Phil Ivey, and David Benjamin. Sammy came out ahead as far as I remember. So don't look down on Sammy's shorthanded PLO game. He can be pretty tough.
So is Sammy still playing? Have you seen him for any time recently at all? Because I saw him one time at the Aria. And I was like, I've just watched him so much on High Stakes Poker, and he was always this like fascinating character with the cigarette that he never actually lit and the suits and all that kind of stuff. And that was really the only time I've seen him in the past bunch of years, or even seen him really associated with in the poker world. I guess I hear he plays in a home game down in Houston, but that's I don't really know too much about him.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I occasionally hear of a Sammy sighting. Someone say they saw him playing blackjack or saw him playing poker. I have a feeling he was there last year at the World Series. So he shows up from time to time. And another guy who's underrated is a guy you had on your show last time, Gus. Gus is actually a really smart guy and a really good poker player. And I think people saw he lost a lot of money online. He's not a good manager. Okay, that's really what it comes down to. But he's got a lot of poker talent. I know Gus from when he wasn't a good poker player. When he first started playing the big game, was the worst player. But he became really good. And there are 2 guys, and you would never, if I asked you who are the best tournament players in the world, if you look at the amount of tournaments they've played and their records, I can name you 2 guys based on just that, which we never do in poker. We don't have a batting average. The 2 guys, and again, one of the skills in that is playing good against bad players. And my 2 guys for the best 2 in the world, and no one else is going to choose these. They'll choose other people who probably have won more money. But percentage-wise, Gus is one of them. and the other is Carlos Mortensen. And I've seen Carlos like call with ace high against a player he's only been playing with for a half hour, is not a good player, and be right, stuff like that. Just really make good reads on people they don't know who are bad players, which is obviously a very important skill. I mean, one of the things I do is often I don't play many hands at a new table the first half hour till I feel I have a good feel for people and know what they're doing. But these guys are probably really quick at getting those reads and knowing what they're doing. They're good. There's just no doubt. If you look at their records, they don't play a lot of tournaments. Look at how many they've won, what they've done. They aren't these guys who are out there playing a tournament every day, like some other people are playing every WPT or every World Series event. They're just occasionally playing, and when they're playing, they're getting hold of chips. So they're both really good. Gus is good, and Gus is even good at PLO and other games and stuff like that. Maybe a little loose, but he is a tough player.
Yeah, maybe a little loose is correct. Yes, maybe a little loose.
Yeah, double suited. It doesn't matter what the cards are. They're always going to be a re-raise and always going to be played for a lot of chips. But he's better than you think, and his management is bad. And so, but he got taken off. He didn't want to say exactly what it was, but I mean, you probably know. Here's the things that some of the younger players were doing to him. They would all play, and maybe they wouldn't share bankrolls, but they did equity sharing. And what that means for people who don't know is if the money goes in, instead of just I win, you lose, if they could knock Gus out of a pot, they would then get maybe, often 55-45. The result didn't matter. They would share. And the games were so big, you'd say, well, what's so unfair about that? Well, these games are so big that it was jeopardizing anyone's bankroll. And sometimes if the games are jeopardizing your bankroll, you end up folding where you might not have folded if your bankroll was bigger. These guys didn't have to fold in those situations. And Gus was confused in the way a lot of hands got played by people equity sharing against him. And, and I know about that. That's one of the reasons I run it once, is I kind of got taken off that way by Gus, surprisingly, not underhandedly, but we used to play in the mixed game, 100,000 cap PLO, sometimes 75,000, depending on how big the game was. And every hand that got played, if two small cards came down and two to a flush, it almost always was the same. Gus had the low rep. I can't understand, unless you've seen Gus's hand selection, how a guy can 98% of the time when the chips go in, have 8-5-4 with a 6-7 on board or whatever. He always has the low rap. Sammy always has a flush draw, not necessarily the nut flush draw. And I'm sitting there with my usual aces or kings or sometimes a set. And if you don't have a set and it goes bet raised you, it's very tough to play aces, obviously, and you end up folding. And what would happen is they would get the money in and then they'd run it twice. This was my first introduction to running it twice. And they would now split up, and I'd see so many times they'd be splitting up my money. They'd each win one. The low rabbit hit once, the Sammy's hand would win once, they'd chop. And I kept getting chopped up when I didn't flop a set. And even sometimes when I flopped a set, I lost too, obviously, when I'm up against basically a straight and a flush draw between two people. But I just got this, I had more money than they did, or at least I think I did, to play it those days. And I just started saying, I didn't know much about this, run it once, run it twice. This is before I'd even thought about it. I said, and a couple times they get in with me, and especially Gus didn't have as much money as I did in those days. And I'd say, no, one time. And I noticed if I could let them know I only ran it once, they were a lot less likely to do this whipsaw and get the money in because their bankrolls couldn't handle it as well. And that was another reason I ran it once, is putting the fear of they might get heads up with me and there's no run it twice and you might be out of the game, seemed to work to my advantage. And you might say, why? They're taking the worst of it in some of these situations. They might have been if I could see their hands, but they would get fold equity against me because I, let's say, played badly or played too tight against them or played incorrectly. I was getting the worst of it. You can say I got outplayed, however you want to look at it. I was getting outplayed more when they ran it twice than I was when I let them know we only run it once.
Yeah, I mean, the run it once versus run it twice is a big debate. I'm kind of thinking about it from the other side. So isn't there a lot of ways potentially as one of the better players could take advantage of other people too in situations where it's between running it once and running it twice?
Well, I'm sure there are ways you can take advantage of things, but that's if you play perfectly or well or whatever. Since I'm not perfect and play bad in times, whatever, I'm just looking for what makes it easier for me. So there are often ways to exploit what people are doing, but just because there are ways to do it, maybe you're not good enough to do it. So it doesn't factor in if you can't take advantage. And sometimes it's a bankroll consideration that's stopping you from taking that advantage. There are just other factors. And again, it goes down to what I was telling Sasha when she came out. She wanted to play in one game that was too high for a bankroll. I said, no, playing that smaller game. She said, I can't make much money playing on that. I said, yeah, you can. And if you make money there, you can build up. And you're looking over there at Sasha. It was overwhelmingly successful, what I told her to do.
You might need a reminder of this one. Okay. She might need this reminder once a week. I don't know. I mean, I think we all need a reminder. I needed this reminder many, many times over the course of my poker career too. So it's not like, not any of us are immune to this. We sometimes play above our bankroll. It definitely does happen.
No, and even when Sasha was playing, why don't you play in that bigger game? And I know playing on a shorter bankroll, playing, the cap is, let's say 4,000 or 6,000 in the big bet games, in the mixed game, in the bigger game. If I got 10,000 in my pocket, maybe I'll find a reason to fold and play a different hand or a different game when I have a question. I don't want to ever be put to that type of test where where I know that it may cause me to make a bankroll decision or something like that. I don't want to be, because I used to do that to other people all the time. I made a lot of money pushing people around just that same way. I don't want to get pushed around that way.
Yeah, there was one thing that somebody mentioned in the chat, and someone on Twitter mentioned about when All About Vulgaris was on my podcast, and he talked about, I think so. This guy said it was about making you fold king, and he had a bluff or something like that, and he said that you were on one of your last bullets during that time. I think he told that when he was on the podcast. This was a couple of years back.
I made him fold.
You made him fold.
Yeah, I jacked 4 suit.
So who folded the kings then?
He folded.
He folded the kings. So who? Oh, now it makes more fucking sense. Okay, he thought that you were less likely to get out of line because he thought that, so that's why he folded kings against you.
Yeah, I wasn't on my left. Maybe he thought that.
That was what he said. Yeah, that makes more sense now. Yeah.
Yeah, he couldn't believe it at the time. We were playing. He had either kings or queens. I think it was kings. And what happened was, I used to tell, like Mimi, when I first started playing tournaments, I played tournaments really aggressively. And remember, back in the day, players weren't as good, and I just robbed them and push them around. You can't do it as much because now other people play like that too. But it was very easy. And I told Mimi, when you sit at a new table, this was part of my initial strategy to her, and someone raises on the button, don't even look at your cards. Re-raise them. Make a 3 times bet. Someone makes it 1,200, make it 3,600, whatever. You don't even look. I said, the only reason to look at your cards might be to see if you have aces and you want to keep them in. But outside of that, re-raise them immediately. I said, because what's going to happen is people like to rob a lot in tournaments on the button and in the cutoff, and let them know they can't rob you as soon as possible. And I said, especially as a woman, they're always going to give you credit. Re-raise them, don't bother looking at your cards, fire, take the pot down. And that was one of my initial things I told her to do, which I always tell her, you don't have to be as good as me. If you're like half as good, whatever that means, you'll do better, because men will not be able to play against you well as long as you're aggressive. And that's why Sasha caught my eye, not because she's so pretty, which
yeah, okay.
I played with her in a tournament, and Sasha's got speed, as you know. She will fire and she will bluff. I played a tournament.
Listen, there are a lot of people watching. Sasha's tight players. A lot of people watching it. She's a very tight player.
Yeah. That will help her. And she made this 3-barrel bluff at the table we were at, and the guy called her all the way down, I think, with second pair, and crippled her. And then she went out. And what happened was, it like woke me up. I'm usually asleep, not paying attention. It was at the Gardens. They wanted me to play this tournament. They put me in. To give you an idea, how many tournaments do you think I've played where people weren't paying me to play since the World Series? The answer is 0. I don't play tournaments because, again, it's a day off from work. But they wanted me to play, and they wanted me to give a talk. I gave a talk with Moneymaker where we did a Q&A thing. So they put me in whatever. So I did it. And lo and behold, that's how I met Sasha. So she made this play, and I see her walking around later. Well, what happened is, I played with this guy who took her off. He played every hand and called every bet, and eventually went busted. And the final hand he went busted was with 7s with the 3 overcards on the board. And I said, and then I just saw her, and I said, by the way, you made a real good bet, everyone at the table would have folded, but this guy, you just picked the wrong guy. I said, this guy went busted. He had like triple starting stack after he beat her that pot. And I said, he was the next one out after you.
Oh.
And I said, you just picked the wrong guy. I don't want you to think you made a bad play. You made a good play. You just picked the wrong guy. And she said, oh, thank you for that. And then, we saw each other later. She bought another bullet or whatever. We saw each other. And then, so I wasn't trying to pick her up or anything, but she said, can I ask you poker questions? And I said, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. And then I did say, well, you can text me. We can exchange numbers, So we exchanged numbers and she's texting me. And then like a couple days later, and I don't think I said much to her. I don't think we talked that much. Maybe we talked more than I thought, or text, whatever. She's leading this PLO tournament, big chip leader where it's obvious she's going to win. And she's three-handed with Alan Lee, who's Nam Lee's younger brother, and this guy we call Panda, I think. And she's got 2/3 of the chips at least, three-handed. But she doubles Panda up twice where he's got the worst of it. And before you know it, I eventually came back. Well, she had told me one thing. She said, if they interview me afterwards, I'm going to tell them you're my mentor. I said, I'm not your mentor. That's not fair to you. You learned poker. I didn't teach you poker. You learned it on your own. I said, don't say that. I'm not your mentor. And she said, no, well, you've taught me. I said, I haven't taught you anything. You learned on your own. And so I came back. I was playing in a cash game. I came back to like see her award ceremony. And I see her standing by the side. She just got knocked out. And I said, well, what happened? And she tells me this guy, Panda, he doubled through me twice, whatever. I talked to Alan Lee, and he said, no, she played tough. She's a tough player. Alan's a real good player and done real well. He and his brother Tommy have done real well in PLO tournaments and PLO cash games. And so it convinced me, based on what he said, I was pretty convinced already Sasha's a good player. But anyway, so at that point I said, no, Sasha, I'm not your mentor. Well, eventually we got a relationship where I was starting to help her mentor. Now I'm okay with it. But at that point, it was kind of premature. Premature mentoring, is there such a thing? But
I don't know. I've never prematurely mentored anybody. Well, I guess I mentor some like other poker player guys.
Well, she kept claiming that she had learned more just from talking. It's like these types of things. She said, no, I learned more than you think. You've already helped me more than you think. I said, yeah, because I don't think I've helped you at all. So it has to be more than I think. But so anyway, that was how Sasha and I struck up our relationship, was from that. Just in case you're wondering. But I was talking about Gus.
Yeah, I was like, wait, how do we get to this? I was thinking, I was in my mind right now. I was sitting like, wait, how the fuck did we get to this topic here? Wait a second. Okay.
But Gus, talking about exploiting people's weaknesses.
Here
Gus
we go.
had a weakness. And you were talking about Gus and women. I've known Gus since he's 21 or 22 years old, I think. And he was barely a poker player, but he was a good backgammon player, wanted to get into poker. He was playing some poker. He wasn't very good. He told me, I think he'd played in Santa Cruz or somewhere. But even that, it wouldn't have been big bet games, probably. Would have been like my 8 or better, I think. Maybe I got it wrong. But whatever. Alex told me I say whatever too much. I just said it again. But anyway, he jumped in the big game way too prematurely where he had like no shot. But he wanted to play with the best players and get good. He was very shy around women. Like, and even like was complaining to me one time. He said, oh, that girl, she always wants to talk to me about her boyfriend. It really kind of bugs me. I really like her, but, she doesn't know it. And she's always asking my advice. He said, it's driving me crazy, but I can't even tell her I like her and stuff like that, And then there was some other guy. I said, why don't you talk to her? He said, no, I'm afraid to her or whatever. I don't want to talk. So he's really shy around women. Well, when poker blew up, Gus was really big time. And in Europe, Gus was maybe the biggest name. Patrick told me that Gus would walk down the street and get mobbed. That's how big Gus became. Number one player at some point in Europe, really, really big. And women, of course, were coming on to him too. And Gus became all of a sudden ladies' man, had more women than he could want. And he took on all offers. Anyone who was interested, go with Gus. He took up on it. And he had a real, what I would call a weakness for women. But I exploited that really well. And Gus, I know Sasha asked me, she said, Gus said on his interview with you that I might have taught someone. Well, I used to have a lot of side bets. So if someone was betting against someone I had a side bet on, I would naturally help someone at their table if it turned out it was a reasonable thing to do. Well, we had a it's kind of a standard 25,000 lasts longer in the money bet. Me and Gus, I remember I had with Ming Lee and some others. And it was 25,000 probably was the buy-in for like the 25,000 WPT. So what I did, I had this idea. I don't think I just came up with it, but as I was going down to the tournament, it had to be in the Bellagio. I go down, I come out the elevator. There was a really pretty girl who happened to be a working girl. And they normally say, hey, you want a party, stuff like that. But this girl was really engaging, really had a good personality and said, hey, honey, this and this and this, and kind of talking. I said, okay, well, you want whatever. Like, she had real good talk, okay? And I got an idea, and I said, hey, I got an idea. I don't know if this interests you, but I'll pay you $200 an hour to do something. And it doesn't involve having sex. I said, you don't have to have sex with me or anyone else. I don't know if that's a reasonable price. I'm a poker player, and I've got an idea. All I want you to do is I'll get a chair for you. You sit on the rail, and I want you to talk with this friend of mine. That's all you have. She's just talking. I said, yeah, be yourself. You got a really good personality. Just be yourself and talk to this guy. And the reason I told her, I said, the reason is it will distract him, and I have a bet against her. I told her that. I probably didn't tell her it was 25,000. But I said that's all I want you to do. She sits on the rail and starts talking to Gus. Gus didn't make it through the first level, and then I talked to Gus, and I made in the money. I won 25,000. The poor girl, she only lasted Gus only lasted like an hour. She only made $200. I thought I was going to pay her 1,000 or something. So she gets her $200. I said to Gus, hey, Gus, what happened? He said, boy, I just couldn't focus. This girl kept talking to me. And I was just looking at this girl and talking. She really was a attractive girl, whatever. And I leveled with him. I said, yeah, that was a pretty good $200 I spent. It only cost me $200 to win the 25,000. I told him. So now he's like upset at me. That's why he suspects I might have helped someone else, because he knew that was in my repertoire that I would do something. Well, anyway, so then Gus said, hey, that girl's really good. And he said, why don't you bring her to the poker game, the regular poker game, see what happens. So we had the regular poker game, me, Doyle, I know Lyle was there, some other people, Lyle Berman and Gus, whatever. I told the girl, okay, I feel bad. I thought you were going to make more money. I'll still pay you $200 an hour. Just sit by the poker game and talk. You don't have to talk, but if people talk to you, talk back, whatever. And she said, I really like watching. Of course, people always love watching the high stakes game. I've had so many big time people sit behind me, famous people, Tommy Lasorda, Alex Rodriguez, Toby Maguire before he became a poker player. Who else is famous? Don Cheadle. Lots of famous actors. What they see the big game and they say Tommy Lasorda is the funniest. People don't know he was manager of the Dodgers.
He's really eccentric.
Yeah, really eccentric. Every time the pot he would count the pot as it's going on, and whenever the pot had gone to 100,000, he yelled at people. I don't even think he knew the pot's 100,000. It's $100,000 in this pot. He just screamed it out. He loved it. He was really funny. But anyway, so this girl is sitting at the side of the game, and I remember the poker players. I just said to them, "Oh, she's a friend of mine. Do you mind if she watches?" And they're just talking. I remember Lyle couldn't focus at all. I can't remember who else, but they're talking. Finally, Doyle said, "No more sweaters. We can't have people watching the game." And then they even made what is called the Bobby Baldwin rule. And Gus used to actually, funny, have his Danish male friends sit behind him sometimes, and they'd be talking. But Bobby made a rule. The Bobby Baldwin rule is no one can sit behind you unless you're sleeping with them. He didn't say it that politely, but you can imagine the way he said, you have to be doing something with this person for them to sit behind you. That was the Bobby Baldwin rule. So it got all the sweaters out, and because they just realized they got tired of people being behind and talking and stuff like that. So that became the rule.
So was this a profitable strategy while it worked out for you? Was this?
Oh yeah. Well, actually, Doyle just said, Barry, the girls got to go, because nobody would play. It just stopped the game. It's on Lyle. Everyone's saying, Lyle, it's on you. He's talking to the girl, telling her a story, and it made it so the game just didn't function. And Doyle told me I had to kick the girl out. So that was the end of that strategy.
Do we know what happened to this girl? Where's the girl at now?
I don't know. She could be doing other things than being a working girl. She had a real great personality. Hopefully, she's graduated on to another career. I mean, I don't have anything against what she was doing, but she had a lot of. She's just really good conversationalist. Which reminds me, the other times some hooker, two girls tried to pick me up. These girls saying, "Hey, honey, you know, want to party and all that stuff," and I just lost a bunch of money. I had a big loss as I was walking back to my room, and I said, "I don't think so." I said, "I don't know what's going to be worse: you guys pretending that I'm sexually stimulating to you, or me pretending you're intellectually stimulating to me, or me trying to convince you you're intellectually stimulating to me." And I remember they both looked at each other because they were trying to figure out what I said. And then one girl finally said, "Did he insult us?"
And then you took him upstairs, and then you took him upstairs.
But then I took him upstairs, and it was hookers and blow all over again. No.
Okay. I figured that's what happened there.
Yeah, no. I just really, I wasn't in my best mood at the time. As a matter of fact, nowadays you have to be careful what you say to women. Yesterday I was at the Gardens. My friend Tiffany Michelle is running this thing. It's like a live stream. It's like a live at the bike thing, but they call it like.
Yeah, it's the Poker Night in America show that they're doing. Yeah,
in America they do, right? And they have these girls, and one of them is this girl. Her name is Lena Evans.
I know Lena. Yeah.
And another girl is Jenna. What was her name? I can't remember. I don't want to start saying names because I can't remember all these names. But again, a friend of mine, I've known her when she was another girl I knew from the time she's 21 years old. And another girl plays at the Gardens. So I know, a lot of real nice girls. They didn't have enough players. They said, "Hey, it could be Barry and the girls." And they're trying to talk me into playing. And then I said, "No, I don't want to play." And they said, "Oh, come on, it'd be a lot of fun. We'll have a lot of fun playing with you." And then I said, I really made again, to show you how you have to be more careful nowadays of being a sexist. I said, "Come on, I don't want to play with you guys. I have no interest in trying to take your money." And then two of them right away said, "What makes you think you're going to win?" So they put me in my place. And I said, "Okay, I didn't say that correctly." I said, "I don't want to lose, and I don't want to take your money." And then even the guy who's like the card room top section manager said, "We'll pay you to play. We'll put you in, whatever." And I said, "No, Eric Miller's there." I said, "No, Eric." He said, "I'll put up all the money. You don't have to worry about it." I said, "No, it's not that. I don't want to play in these things. I don't want to play. It has nothing to do with money." I said, "These are my friends. I don't want to play against them. I want them to have a good time. I want them to do well." So I didn't play.
You got to be careful what you say to women, for sure, Barry. You can't say things like, "Oh, I'm taking it easy on you because you're that." I mean, I don't know. It's out of line. I'm careful. I used to be out of line when I talked on the podcast a few years back, but now I just don't say anything. I say, "Oh, I don't."
Well, the funny thing is, it's usually been like in poker tournaments, 4% of the players are women, not a very high number. I kept thinking it was going to go up because of online poker. I've heard a lot of women would get good playing online. It's obviously a sexist situation, just the talk and the way men treat women.
Mm-hmm.
Until them, obviously, and I had it with Mimi when she was a good player, where they'd say, "You shouldn't be here. You should be in the kitchen. You should be making babies." And Sasha's still going to get some of that stuff. It's just the way it is, and it's tougher for women to come up in that environment. The deck is stacked against them, but we are going to have more good women players. Oh, Alex is holding up a sign now. She's listening to me. "Men just calling us honey or baby." Yeah, Alex, my girlfriend, plays poker. She said she can't stand being called honey or baby. Okay, just so you know. Strangers calling her that. So, but that's just the way the environment is. And it is how it is. And women are going to become increasingly better poker players over time, as the norms are changing. Which we're seeing. And so every time you see a woman, they need to have aggression to do well. Jennifer Harmon, certainly I would say the top woman player overall that we've had. She's an aggressive person. If you look at our game when we used to play big and ask who is the most aggressive person as a personality, it's Jennifer. Screaming at people, getting in fights, it's Jennifer. You have to have some aggression. The successful women often have aggression, just be able partly to fight that environment. And poker, you need aggression to do well in poker anyway. I remember the first time I saw Vanessa Selps. I was doing part of the broadcast. She had gotten to a final table, and she had 5 deuce offsuit and like 6-bet bluff into aces and went busted. And and everyone was saying, "What on earth got on into her?" And I remember saying at the time, it's probably her first televised final table, or it wasn't televised, but they would have like that stream that they have at the World Series, and it was on that thing. And I remember saying, I don't remember ever seeing a woman get 6 bets in with 5 deuce offsuit. I think you're going to have to look out for this woman. If she can do that, she is going to be making a lot of men fold their hands. Because I can tell you, if I have king high flush when they're three to a flush on the board, and a woman puts the 3rd bet in against me, I fold. If I don't know who she is, I mean, if women make me fold a lot of hands. If this girl's going around with 5 deuce and pushing people around, I'm sure she got here with that same play, making a lot of people fold. You're going to hear, and I remember saying on the broadcast, I have a feeling you're going to hear from her again. And 3 years later, who was Vanessa Selps? Not only the best female tournament player in the world, the question was she the best overall tournament player in the world? You took out the female when it came to her, as you do nowadays with a lot of top women players, and that's going to keep happening where you don't have to put the female designation with some of these players. And, and I'm thinking Sasha is going to be another one of these where she's just a good player. She is going to do things.
I think we're a long time away from people removing the best female from the equation, though. I don't see that happen anytime soon, especially with how men are. And, it's not like men are any different now in the live poker games I go play. The men are still out of line. So I don't know if that's going to go away, especially with online. The majority is all men that watch poker content. My audience is pretty much all men out there. I think a lot of other people who create poker content, their audiences are all men as well, too. So I think there's always going to be that distinction in place of female.
Well, there are barriers, like we said, just even getting in the games and getting in these situations. There are barriers against women, and there always have been. I remember, I don't know her name was Betty Carey, but like I played at the Red Men's Clubs in Texas, where it's an all men's club, and then she wanted to sue the club because she wanted to play, and they finally made a deal that she had to play someone in the game heads up, and if she lost, then she had to drop the lawsuit, and the guy beat her, and that was the end of it. But I'm not sure if it was her or someone else. So if I have the name wrong, I have the name wrong. But men wanted their men's place for poker. It was a men's thing. And you might say that's not fair. But again, if 96% of the players are men, they get to make the rules. That's just the way it ends up. It's a huge majority. So there are barriers there. And I think there are also societal, and there are, although women might not like to hear this, there are gender barriers. And I'm not even going to say if it's genetic by gender, or if it's because society makes them that way. But like I was saying, aggression is important in poker. We normally don't teach our daughters to be aggressive. And when I say we, I don't mean me. I was rougher with my daughters than most parents. But most parents are having their daughters play with Barbie, and their boys play with, whatever, G.I. Joe. And so they raise them that way, and society raises girls to be softer and gentler than they do raise men. And when it comes to playing poker, you need that aggression. And normally, the women I see that do have that aggression probably had a good father-daughter relationship, where their fathers just raised them, maybe even be tomboys. Most of the ones you hear do well played sports with boys, were tomboys a little bit growing up, and just had that aggression just the way they were raised. And again, the majority, boys, we always raised our boys are normally to be tougher. From the time there, I raised my boys more than my girls. I grew up in a time where boys didn't cry, and you had to be tough and macho. And, I was the firstborn male child. I had to be some important thing in my family. And most cultures do have that with the firstborn male child. He's got to be tough. He's got to be strong. I've told this story, but a lot of your listeners are new. Just even, a story I remember with Joey. I played my son Joe. We play a lot of one-on-one basketball. And it was hard on him because I was taller than him, so it was hard for him to win. And he might have been 10 years old. And, I played rough with my kids, my boys. And the ball's going out of bounds, and I saved it and smacked him right in the face. Knocked him to the ground, and he's crying. And I already knew what was about to happen. He's going to run in and tell his mother. And I ran in because he was on the ground long enough. I beat him in the house. And I said, don't baby him. Okay, don't baby him. Because I already had this argument with my wife where she would complain, like, the boys are in the trees, you know. I say, so what? She said, well, they could fall and break their arm. I said, well, then they break their arm. That's what boys do. That's what they should do. That's what I did. And we'd have these arguments even about it, you know. And so I said, don't baby him. And so, you know, because I was really afraid that she's going to soften my kid, you know. And so finally he gets up and he goes, Mary threw the ball off my face and, you know, he hit me and, you know, like complaining and waiting for a response. And she said, one of the best things she's ever said. She said, well, I guess then it's his ball out of bounds.
Yeah, did it? Wow.
So she did come up with the right answer. So, and, you know, I raised my kid to be tough, you know.
You still play ball now? You still play? You want to play?
My best one-on-one was Joey, who was a pretty good basketball player, but he had to play guard. He was good enough to play. He played football, and even though he's small, Joey's not much taller than I am. And he played some basketball, got to be, you know, pretty good at sports. You know, I played sports with him. And he came back from college. I'm 20 years older than Joey, I think. Maybe 22. He's like 41, I think. I'm 63. Maybe he's 40. I don't even know. I think he's 41. He was in college, came back, telling me I was, you know, and we used to play one-on-one. Now, I'm 20 years older than him. And he had gotten a little out of shape. And we played one-on-one, and I had better stamina than him. You know, I'm in my 40s. He's 19. I was probably 41. And we played, and I ran him into the ground and beat him. And I mocked him and laughed at him. I said, you couldn't handle it. You know, I just ran you into the ground. And that was when, and he came back, and I said, you know, you're getting a little fat. And to this day, he gets up in the morning at 5:30 in the morning. He runs around the lake near where he lives. And he says that when I ran him into the ground and when I said he was getting fat, it's just what makes him work out. You know, so it might have been mean. It might have been tough love, but Joey's in good shape and stays in good shape. By the way, I used to be pretty strong, just so you know. Let me tell you a story about Gus and me. I used to be a wrestler, very strong, golfer. I was in a lot of sports. I played football, but only tackled. People wimp out and want to play touch. I wouldn't play that. Played baseball, good center fielder, whatever. I was in a lot of sports. And I'd mentioned, you know, I used to be pretty strong. I could climb the ropes when I was a wrestler without my feet. You know, climb those ropes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I high jumped my height. I did a lot of things in sports. So, and I said, I'm pretty strong. I know how strong I am now, but I know I'm stronger than you guys think. And I was, let's say, 50 and Gus was 30. And Gus was playing squash every day and tennis and things like that. Alex is writing a note. By the way, Alex is my filter, and I have a feeling I already know what this note is. Quit talking about yourself. It is. I read it. I knew it before.
Is that really the note? Is that what it says?
Or she put it up. She's always like, you're talking too much about yourself, saying good things about yourself. She's my filter. She'll like pinch me, kick me when I'm doing interviews. Now she's doing it in notes. It's notes like in that movie where the guy has the cards with the notes. So she's right notes. But let me finish this story.
She can just come on. She can go on. Come on.
She's always in the background. You won't ever see her. If I ever like put a post or something with her on, she'll be mad. She likes to be in the background. But anyway, so I said, I think I'm still pretty strong because, you know, I still used to work out some. And they said, like what? I said, well, like even arm wrestle. I said, they said, you know, Gus is real strong. Gus would work out all the time. I said, if I arm wrestle Gus, I know he's 20 years younger and he's stronger than me and he would beat me, but I bet he'll see that I'm stronger than he thought. And I remember Patrick was there and I can't remember what else. And I said, okay, let's arm wrestle. We put our arms up, we arm wrestled. It took a minute and a half for him to beat me. And we were there and like everyone's like, I remember the looks on, I was looking up and people were saying, I can't believe it. Because Gus was the in shape, strong guy, right, working out all the time. And here I'm 50 years old and I'm holding him to a draw. I said, I told you, I used to be strong. But we finally did it. Finally, I couldn't take it. And he beat me. I couldn't use that arm for 2 weeks. What that did to the ligaments in my arm, boy, I will never arm wrestle again. I realize I'm too old for that. And yeah, I'm probably too old. I'm too old to play basketball. One of the things about me in sports is in my mind, I'm still young. Mm-hmm. And I've had so many injuries in sports, colliding with people in the outfield. I remember in college, we played football in a parking lot. I dove headfirst for a ball right into a car. I got my lips torn off when I was like 18 years old playing volleyball, where some guy elbowed me and came down. I had to carry my lips into the hospital, where the student hospital. And I remember as a German doctor, they put something over your face and it's got a hole in it. And I don't know, maybe a little bit, I was waiting for the anesthesia. And then she said, we can't give you anesthesia because it won't heal that well. Like anesthesia affects the healing, apparently. And she said, his lips are like scar tissue anyway. And I see this needle coming in and going out of this hole, sewing my lips back on. So I don't think you can see my lips were torn off. But I used to have lots of sports injuries, and I've had to stop playing because I don't know how to go halfway. I could never ski. I wasn't a good skier anyway, but I would do ski jumps or go down backwards and do things. I would still try to do that, and I'd be lucky if I only broke my leg. What's more likely is I'd ram into a tree or something, because I'm not even that good. But I don't know how to do things halfway. So to protect myself, I've been out 2 weeks from golfing. I play golf every day, getting ready for this match. People may know him from one of the teaching schools, Zach Freeman.
Yeah, I know Zach, yeah.
So we're going to play a match where we scramble our own ball. And I've just started golfing again this year. I'd taken like 7 years off. Scrambling your own ball is like playing 36 holes. It means you hit 2 shots, and then you take the best shot and you hit again. And I can still hit the ball pretty far. My normal drive is like 270, 280, if you're a golfer out there. But if I really go after it and draw it, I can hit it 300. So I'd hit my first drive, like say 270, 280 down the middle, and then really go after the second drive. And by the time we got to the end of the round, I was like out of gas. And then the next day, my back was sore. And again, because I overdid it, I wasn't ready to play 4 days in a row and then play 36 holes. Put me out of commission for 2 weeks. We're going to play again this week. And I'm still debating if I should scramble them or play just one-on-one, one ball. But yeah, Zach's a good PLO player, pretty loose. Zach is always in the hand. I don't know if you played with Zach.
Yeah, we played on, I think when I did my Live at the Bike PLO week, he played, he was in the 2550 game that we played. And that was the first time I actually played with him. I've known him from the training videos I think he's done before. But yeah, that was my first time ever really getting a chance to play with him, though.
Yeah, you'll know Zach's at the table, that's for sure. He plays a lot of hands. But anyway, and he's a really rabid. He's only been golfing a few years, and he's really into it. And I keep telling him, I got to beat him now. And I don't even think I'm ahead of him overall. We play a lot of scrambles with other people, too. So one-on-one, we're probably about even what we've done so far. And I keep telling him, I got to beat you now because I don't know how old he is, 35, 37. He's going to keep getting better. One of the reasons I'm even golfing now is I want to see how good I can get now, because I'll never be this good again. Because when you're at my age, you have to be going downhill. And I'd taken 7 years off, and now I'm trying to play to see. I just want to know what my peak is. And my peak is, about what Zach and I are pretty close. And I'm hoping to beat him this week. We'll play, we play for fairly substantial stakes. And so we'll see what happens.
Do you guys play straight up? Is it straight up? Just who gets the best score wins, or is there a handicap or anything like that?
All sorts of bets. If you're not a golfer, it wouldn't make sense. We have Nassaus and stroke bets and scrambles, and we have all sorts of other things going on. They're usually like 8 bets to start. And then they have all these things with carryovers. And
are you going to send a girl to his house before the match, or is he's a family guy? So I think that one's out.
Married. I don't think girls would face him. I've met his wife, nice woman, and no, I don't think Zach goes down.
He's really good.
He's got a 7-year-old. Actually, we had another bet he wanted to make. His 7-year-old kid. What's his kid's name? Begins with a C. I can't remember. But anyway, his kid is a good golfer for 7-year-old, plays in tournaments. And one of the bets Zach wanted to make me is me play his kid even when this kid is 12. And Zach will take his kid against me. And I told him I don't like making bets that are 5 years out. And so the first few times he brought it up, I said, no, I'm going to be afraid. Cole. His name is Cole. I think his bag says Cole. That's how much the kid loves golf. Zach takes him out sometime. We even have some matches where Cole is we have this one match where we play our balls, but he gets Cole's ball when they're within 50 yards. Cole gets to hit a shot too. And they take the best. And we've used some of Cole's shots. Cole's pretty good. And I had my partner that I could only use from 50 yards in. So it's me scrambling, Zach scrambling. He gets Cole, I get a guy too. And I don't even know who's ahead on those things. But Cole's helped. I think I'm ahead on those things, but I'm not positive. And he's a good father to his son. His kid loves, I think that's more noises. I think that was,
I was like, where's that coming from?
that's the microwave. I don't know.
Okay, I was like, well, looking
Anyway,
around, where am I hearing
so
this?
Cole, but so he wants to bet me Cole will beat me when Cole's 12 years old. And I don't think so, but then I forgot something. A really important thing about that bet. When I was thinking about that bet, let's say I don't want to tell people what I can shoot because it's bad strategy to let people know how good you are at golf. So I'm not going to put that out. But I didn't think he would be that good at 12 years old, because for him, if he's better than me at 12 years old, he's on the way to being a professional golfer. That's all I can say. 12-year-olds who can play as good as I can are going to be really good. But then I forgot one thing, really important thing, and you haven't mentioned it, so maybe you don't know what it is. In 5 years, I'm not going to be 63 anymore. I'm going to be 68.
You're going to be old, yeah.
I didn't factor in that 68 starts to be pretty old for a golfer. Once you go over like 70, you're really over the hill. And so I forgot to factor in that I won't be as good. And so now I'm thinking he might be right.
Yeah, I don't have any context on how good golfers are at 68. I know that the Masters, they have like a three. What is it, there's like it's a short, one of the old school legends one, and I was listening to a podcast.
Tom Watson won the par 3 contest.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. How old is he? Like 80?
No, he's older than I am. I played behind him. He's a few years older than I am, because I remember a Tom Watson story for your golfers out there, which are almost none. I used to play University of Illinois course. I was a real good golfer. To tell you how good I was, even with Jay Haas in my high school championship, if you know who that is, the first day, although I played the easier of the two courses, and then I got killed the second day. But anyway, so I was a real good high school golfer, and I played behind Tom Watson. I think he's about 5 years older than I am, is my guess. And there was this one, I hit the ball far where I can reach most par 5s in 2. Might not make sense. Well, you watch golf, so you might not know what I mean. Or you might know what I mean. And this 4th hole on the orange course at University of Illinois, I never could hit that hole in 2. I don't know how, maybe 550, something like that. And I always kind of had as a goal, I want to reach that in 2 one day. And Tom Watson was in the group ahead of me. And it's a dog leg right around the water. And I never even thought you could hit over the water. And so I'd always hit, and once in a while I'd have like a 3-wood home, but I couldn't get there. Tom Watson cut the dog leg and was like 180 out in his second shot, easily reached in 2, and hit a shot, his drive. I never even knew it could be played that way. So he was that much better than I was. He was also 5 years older, and he probably, I don't know if he was already a pro, maybe he just turned pro at the time. But yeah, that was one of my first looks at a guy who's a lot better than I am and could play a course a lot differently than I could.
And then from there, you were able to do it in 2 shots?
I never hit that green. I still never hit it far enough to hit it in 2. No, I never hit that green in 2. But as far as I know.
She said I should challenge you on Pineapple as well, by the way, too, because I've been playing a lot of this Pineapple app on the phone, because she said that because she wanted to play it with me. And the first time we played together, I beat her. Shout out to her. And then the second and third time, she beat me. The 4th time, I beat her. But she says I need to challenge Barry. But okay, I'm imagining you're pretty good. You're pretty good at it.
if you want to play for money, we can play.
I'm imagining you're pretty good at it, Barry. This is my. I have not played very many matches, but I.
Well, you can always tell. You can almost tell if someone's a smart person or a good poker player. You can usually tell how good they are by how long they play. Even before, if you tell me how long you've played, I kind of know about how good you are. I mean, obviously it helps, just like poker. Playing against good players or having a good player to talk to will increase the learning curve, will speed it up. But if you tell me you've been playing for 2 months or whatever, I spot Sasha, as she probably tells you, maybe she didn't. I give her a 0.5 point a hand. At a 0.5 point a hand, she and I are pretty even. Okay? That's how, what the difference is between us. But just like poker and just like most games you play, there are levels. So I'm a different level. And a lot of times people say, oh, are you at the highest level? No. I went to the World Series. A lot of Russian players are better than I am. They have programs, all sorts of things that they've run. There are a lot of them are chess players who study the game like they study chess. Open-faced Chinese poker is like the chess of Chinese poker, if you played regular Chinese poker. A lot of endgame strategy that's similar to chess endgame strategy. So some of these guys are really good. So I had a thing this year where I just said, I'm not going to play with any Russians and see how I do. And I played my first, I'm picking a number, 8 sessions, didn't sit down with a Russian, 8-0. Doing real well, making my buy-ins for some of the tournaments, doing pretty good, okay? And then I played another, I got knocked out of a tournament, so I came and played. And again, I stuck with my rule. And I played, and I was losing this one session, and all of a sudden, someone comes up to the table who I know is Russian, and I didn't know I was playing with a Russian guy. And he speaks in Russian. By the way, I used to speak Russian. I don't speak it very well. Obviously not as well as Sasha, who actually was in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, I accidentally broke my thing. So my first loss was playing with a Russian. I'm not that all the Russians are better than me, but I'm just trying to tell you that there are levels and there are people better than I am. And it's not like in Americans as well as Russian, but there are a lot of really good Russian players. And another thing that happens, and I don't even know if I should say this, but you have it in almost all cultures where funny stuff goes on if they're speaking in another language.
Mm.
And I don't want to even say Russians are worse than any other culture, but if you don't speak the language that people are playing, you have to be careful, where someone might say, this is a dead card, he threw it away in their language. And I've taken people off. 2 of my good languages used to be Cantonese and eventually Vietnamese, because I've had Vietnamese girlfriends. When I say good, I'm not fluent in them, but I can play cards in them. Because obviously know all the cards and the things you say in a poker game in both languages. So I've had times where people have, in their language, said something about the hands or about something else where I know what they're saying, and it hasn't worked out very well for them. And the funniest is because initially Cantonese was better for me than Vietnamese a while ago. Now it's the other way. And I was banking one of these like blackjack games, and these guys were talking in Vietnamese. And then my Vietnamese girlfriend comes up to me and they say, uh-oh, he's got a Vietnamese girlfriend. They say it in Vietnamese. And then they start speaking in Cantonese and don't know that actually was a better language for me, made it even easier for me. Now they're talking about their hands in Cantonese. So yeah, stuff gets said in other languages that if you don't speak the language, you better be careful.
Mm. So how much of this, I guess kind of going back on the idea of cheating, how much do you think cheating in any sort of capacity still happens in live poker right now?
It's so much less. And what people don't realize, I was, as I said, a really good junior golfer. There was so much cheating in golf.
Yeah, you mentioned that last time we were on here. I think, yeah,
right.
People would.
Okay, that's one repeat. Then I became a poker player because it was more honest. It's pretty honest, especially if you know the people. We ask if people cheat or shoot angles, especially at the bigger games, they're almost really close. People say I'm naive, but I'm not. It's almost 100% honest. You'll have some people who may shoot an angle, they get ostracized. If someone's pulling angles on you, they're just going to not play with you because that's the way the community is. So no, it's pretty clean. It happens. We know about the scandals. We know about the things that happen. And I've seen a lot of cheating things, been cheated with cameras and mark cards and all these things, but it happens way less. People who lose always like to say there was probably something funny going on. I got cheated. That's just the way it always is. Just the same online as people say it's rigged. And I'll say, yeah, it's rigged. They tell me on play money when I beat them apart, it's rigged.
Yeah.
So people always think when they lose, it's rigged. No, it isn't set up. It's probably not rigged. There are a lot of people out there saying I'm wrong. It's rigged against them. They know it's all rigged. It's set up. No, sites make money by spreading a fair game. It's really important to these sites. Not that there haven't been scandals and not that there aren't partnerships in games, and there have been. Of course there are. But you have that security, and they're trying to stop that stuff as much as possible. It's. I don't think that's a big danger for a winning player. It happens, and I think it was Zach. Yeah, Zach told me the other day he wished he'd take my advice. Just like I give advice to any people. If you're in situations where you keep losing, stop playing in those situations. So it may have been against you. I have had a couple times where I stopped, and I later found out that people were cheating, but other people kept playing. So at least have that safeguard that you do that. But for the most part, it's probably that either you got unlucky, you played bad, you underestimated your opponents. That is usually what's going on.
You know, I was watching a documentary yesterday about this Ultimate Bet stuff that happened. I've never seen this really before. Ultimate Bet, there was a massive cheating scandal with Ultimate Bet and Absolute Poker back in the day. And really first time I've heard all this information with the people involved. You have this guy, Russ Hamilton, Andy Duke was around there, Phil Hellmuth closely around there, and a number of other people. And you were very much a part of everything going on in the poker world during this time. Do you remember anything about that scandal that happened?
The only time, you know how I tell you I can say whatever I want and I never get censored. The only time Esai ever said to me, I wish you hadn't said that, was I did an interview with Russ Hamilton. And the worst thing that came out, I didn't know the guy at all. I'd said hi to him twice. And I talked to him, and frankly, I didn't think he was that bright. Okay?
Bang, bang.
And I said to people, I mean, maybe he's a good poker player, and I hear he's a good golf hustler, by the way. But as far as, let me throw Russ a bone, because I don't like saying people aren't bright. Technically savvy. And people were saying that Russ was behind the programming and stuff like that, like he had done it on his own. And after I did the interview, I said, there is no chance that he did this on his own. If he did it, he had to have a partner. And he had tried to nail this guy named Travis McCarr.
Mm-hmm.
And he put out this stuff to say Travis was the guy who did it. And he had said Travis had access to his accounts. And I went on, and it ended up being wrong. I said, I think Russ might even be innocent. I said, for sure he didn't do it on his own. And a lot of people were mad at me for saying that. And then what happened is eventually, thanks to actually Brian Micon and Dandruff, they got an interview with Travis where he had even tapes of Russ even admitting he did it and exonerating himself, and them trying to pin it, and even him scheming to do this interview with me. He wouldn't do it on live TV, but he knew that I was looked up to in the poker community. And he said, my lawyer won't let me do it live. And now I know if you ever have to interview someone who's a cheater, force them to go live. Because if they're honest, like if I were accused of cheating, screw the lawyer. I'm going face to face with you and telling you my side of the story. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Whereas he was saying, no, my lawyer says I can't this and that. Well, it was a scheme to not have people hear what he has to say, because if you go live, you're going to say some things that contradict something that happened, and that's how they're going to nail you. That's why people who are lying or cheating don't want to go live. So that was, I got scammed a little bit there. But eventually I found out it was him, the programmer. I was right that it wasn't him alone. The programmer guy was Greg Pearson, and the other guy who did it was Mansour Matloubi. It was three of them. And a lot of people only think it was Russ Hamilton. No, it was three of them. But anyway, and eventually I posted in the forums that, hey, okay, this is what it was. He was guilty, and these other guys are guilty. And even Haralabus, who told me, you're wrong, I know you're wrong, I have really strong circumstantial evidence that Russ was playing some on this account because he had told a friend of mine he was playing, and then they found out it was a cheating account, and there was cheating. And Haralabus was telling me, I know he cheated. And don't defend him because you're gonna look bad. So I then came out afterwards and said, okay, this is what it is. And I thought I cleared my name as far as what the situation was. But people, the way things are and the way forums are, only remember, a lot of people, they don't get to hear everything you've said. And I've had so many people say, hey, I don't like you because you're a friend of Russ Hamilton's and you defend him. All you guys are in it together. I've had so many times where people think someone I talk about is a friend of mine and I know them real well. And you have to be really careful, because people will only take a small part of this. And there's still some people think I'm a friend of Russ Hamilton's, that I don't think he cheated, and that I defended him because he's a friend of mine. None of that is true. And sometimes it gets really hard to clear yourself once you can get entangled in that stuff. So, yeah, you have to, okay, she's saying Ted Forrest. What about Ted Forrest?
He lost.
That he lost?
In UP.
Oh, he lost investing. Yeah, he lost it. And a lot of people got cheated. And some of those people, I tell them maybe it wasn't Russ, and they got mad at me, and ended up, Russ probably did cheat them. Lee Salem's one. Mike Manasaw, I think, got cheated.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people got money back, got refunds. And yeah, it ended up, yeah, they got cheated. There's no way around that. Absolute Poker was a different thing, as you know, I talked about a little last time. But yeah, there are those scandals and there are those things that happen. And the good thing about online poker, though, is we a lot of times can keep the records of the hands that happened a lot easier than live poker. So online poker, if some really funny stuff, that's how we did the thing with Marko, where we found out he got cheated. They were able to get hand histories and find out it's impossible that this guy played this hand that way, unless he could see your cards. That was the way, outside of the circumstantial evidence of someone winning too easily and calling down with 10-eye and being right, we could then get hand histories and find out. So that's the good thing where you have these online sites, unless the guy behind the site is cheating and gets rid of the hand histories, which did happen in absolute poker. Then it obviously can become even tougher.
Yeah, it's first time really kind of diving deep into what happened with that thing. And I mean, it looked like Absolute Poker that got caught because the guy, whoever was behind Absolute Poker, the security, sent them by accident all the hands in a tournament, which seems like the most brain dead thing of all time. And the ultimate bet thing on its own, that was, I mean, it looks like there's so many people involved in that, but no one really got punished. No one went to jail. No one got.
That's one of the worst things about cheating in poker. Almost always, nothing happens. There's maybe he gets ostracized, but the guy usually doesn't have to give the money back. Usually the cheating just stops. I've seen a couple times where the money from that session got given back, but that's about the most that happens. Yeah, it's unfortunate cheaters don't get. It's one of those things, and there's another thing about having poker regulated that would help out, and all this stuff legal, is where you can take people to court. The way poker is now, especially with it being unregulated and even the sites people play on now that are gray areas, you can't ever take someone to court. Just like if someone gave you bad cocaine, you can't take your drug dealer to court because then you get incriminated also. So if you're playing in an illegal situation, they might arrest you. They're not going to, you're not going to win in court. You're not going to even see court. So yeah, we need poker regulated, and where you can. Someone cheats you, you can sue them and take them to court. That'd be really helpful.
Someone in the chat says, does Barry know anything about Viffer? Yeah, we used to have a segment where we'd have a bunch of Viffer stories on here.
Yeah,
but
I already told you last time. I know a lot of Viffer stories. I can't tell them. Viffer stories.
You can't. Okay, you can't. That's why I didn't come back.
Can get pretty grungy.
Are that out of line?
Viffer will tell some of his out of line stories himself anyway.
Yeah. Viffer's got a lot of stories I hear about live and online, and mainly getting out of line, basically outside of poker. So let me see some of our questions on here. We got some other questions submitted earlier on the Twitter sphere out here. Biggest wins and losses. Yeah. What's some of your biggest wins and losses? You mentioned you had a big loss, PLO, $1.2 million. That's a pretty big loss right there.
Yeah, I've had I think $2 million losses, and hopefully more $1 million wins. So $1 million was the big number in our game. We used to play 100,000 buy-in, 100,000 cap in the big bet games. And so once in a while, if you could get to $1 million, that was a big number.
That would be a big number, I think. What's the most money you've seen somebody lose?
Well, again, $1 million, $2 million, in those ranges. I mean, it's nothing. I mean, the games they play in Macau now are obviously, most of the poker that people play in the States is a lot down from the poker boom, but they still have some of these games in Macau that I remember, the game they were playing is 20,000, 40,000 blinds, American, no limit hold'em. So you can figure out how big that game is.
Do you think a lot of those, do you think any those guys are going to stay over there for as long as the games run, and they'll pretty much be playing live in Asia for forever if the games last forever over there?
I don't know. You can put yourself in their place. How much money do you need? If you made 100 million, would you come home, or would you stay there? Maybe they like their life.
Probably still stay there. I don't know. I probably wouldn't come home. I mean, I don't know. It sounds.
I don't know. Most of the time, what happens in poker is it dries out. And that's kind of what happened. People ask me, how are you playing? Why are you playing smaller? Where did you lose your money? It didn't happen that way. I'm a winning poker player. What happened is when you make a lot of money, you end up getting into entourages and investments and things that take up that money. Money seems to find the vacuum. Okay. You help out a lot of people, whatever. So I made money. My expenses were very high as far as helping people. People know I gave a lot of money away. I never was worried about money and giving money away because I had my Poker Stars contract, which paid my mortgage, and my mortgage was $17,000 a month. So my Poker Stars contract, and I had money left over after that, could pay my mortgage. So my bills were paid. I didn't have to worry about money. But then what happens, and you see this with athletes all the time, so it's not just poker players. When they're making money, they have their entourage and their expenses and their nice houses and cars. But when the money stops, they go broke. It isn't that they lost their money playing basketball, obviously. They just didn't keep making money to keep up with the expenses they built up. So my first couple years of the stakes going down, I'm going through money that I don't make that money anymore. So, I'm bleeding money left and right. I'm having to shed expenses as much as I can, stop giving away money, stop helping people, on and on, can't do it anymore. And then, poker keeps going down and down and down. Eventually, I'm playing smaller with everyone else. So, everyone, my normal game is 1/40th approximately maybe of what I was playing before. And even I've played as small as 40-80, which I was telling Sasha, I'll play as small as 40-80 if the game is good. And I think I can make money at that more than, let's say, the 100-200. I have no problem of people saying, hey, why are you playing so small? It doesn't bother me. I'm really looking at these two things as what is how can I make that money the easiest? With the least risk, pretty effortlessly. If I have to go down to 40, I haven't gone smaller than that. Maybe the economy could get even worse, where it could, and I could play smaller. There's no shame in that. You always should find a place you can make money. And I almost feel for anyone who's serious and has reasonable intelligence, you can find a level in a poker game you can beat. Now, it's not entirely true if you live in an area where there's like a group of guys and there's one game to play, and that may not be true. And it's not entirely true because rakes keep getting higher. If they're raking the game you play in too much, maybe you're better than the people you play in, but you can't beat the rake. So you have to take that into consideration. So it's not 100% true because it's not a zero-sum game. And you also have to beat enough to pay your expenses and your bills. So there's that part of it not being a zero-sum game. And if you're not good enough or not in a good enough situation, let's say, to overcome all that, then you got to get a regular job. That's just the way it is. Where hopefully you can pay your bills.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing that holds people back from becoming full-time poker players is that you have to have enough money to pay your bills, and if you're older, you have expenses, and if you have a wife or you have family, it's really hard to be able to make that consistently. And then if you have a losing month, it's a lot to deal with. So it's a reason why poker is so hard. And I think there's many different reasons why, but I think that's a pretty big reason why. And I remember my old roommate when I lived in San Diego, he would live with me and he would play poker, but he wouldn't play that much poker. And I've always be like, why aren't you moving up stakes? Like, what's going on? What's wrong? And he's like, well, I just can't get ahead of these expenses. And I really didn't have many expenses back at the time besides just my rent. And I was like, what do you mean, man? Like, what are you talking about? Let's move up stakes and just play more. But it was so mentally draining on him to have to worry about these high expenses that he had each month that he just couldn't make it as a poker player and had to move back home. So shout out to KKK if he happens to be watching out there.
Yeah, you're right. Obviously, yeah, that's a big thing. A lot of obstacles in being a professional poker player. Like I know Sasha is tweeting some stuff. I tell her, and she's almost
Wait, what?
No, at times she tweets
what?
stuff. Well, if you follow her on Twitter, you would know.
Things that I thought she was like a good tweeter.
Yeah, and then people will say strategy doesn't work for me, and Sasha has to keep telling them the things that I'm telling her don't apply to everyone. It applies to someone who's a winning poker player, who's a good poker player. For a lot of people, as we said, over 90% of people don't win at poker, even though it's a zero-sum game. But if you factor, rake and other stuff like that, it's hard to beat poker, and it's getting harder. And I'll often have people say to me, it didn't seem so hard, 10, 20 years ago. And I'll say, well, even just taking something simple like the rake, if they're playing 40-80, 61-20, limit hold'em, the rake used to be maybe $35,000 a year. Now it's $70,000 a year. It's doubled. So I say to them, how would you like, they're talking about, hey, it's hard my rent is $1,500. It's hard to pay it. I say, well, if you go back 10 years against these exact same players, you had an extra $3,000 in your pocket every month. That's your rent and then some. So if you're wondering why you're having trouble making ends meet, they're asking me, are the players better? No, the situation is worse. The players may not even be any better, but you're taking $3,000 more out of your pocket every month. And for a 40-80 player, that's a lot of money. $3,000 a month is a lot of money to take out of your pocket.
Mm-hmm. Are the rakes still going up even in live poker? The rakes raising up?
They always go up. Just like the poker star, you were talking about online poker. It's like every 2 years they find a reason to raise the rake $1 in every game. And online, I think they often have better excuses. They at least are doing something with the money that you can see. Like, again, you were talking about people defending poker stars more than they should, and that I say what I think. But I know Poker Stars does spend a lot of money trying to get in these markets and paying lots of things and running tournaments, whatever. At least I see what they're doing with my money. Although I don't play that much online anymore, obviously, because I'm in the United States. But I see they're doing something. I see they have security. I see they have the best support in the business. I see all this stuff, okay? Live, well, again, you have security in live casinos, and they're putting on a nice show. And you have food, and you have all these other things. So they spend their money, there too, so you can see what you're getting for your dollar. But every 2 years, they increase it another $1. And again, as I always say, whether it's online or live, why? And I usually think they're just trying to get another $1 out of me rather than they're providing a better service or that their expenses have necessarily gone up. We're not in a high rate of inflation situation these days, but they always find another. I mean, one of the reasons, I remember the last time they raised it $1, which was 2 years ago, was because they had to pay people minimum wage who were on tips. And a lot of businesses, they were paying people under minimum wage because they were getting tipped. And then I think in California, at least, the law got changed. They still had to pay minimum wage. And so they used that as an excuse. So what did they do? They charged another $1 every half hour in time to offset that expense.
So what are the reasons for Poker Stars raising their rake continuously and eliminating rake back in some games too, which is essentially raising the rake as well?
Yeah, same thing. Again, whenever people come up to me, and again, I know you were like negative on Daniel. Whenever things happen that are bad, we usually have a meeting now, maybe once a year, and we're all in the room together, and everyone is we all have friends who play poker online, obviously. And I have people in the live casino come up to me and say, hey, you were with Poker Stars, they did this. What do you think of that? And sometimes say, yeah, that doesn't look good. I'll talk to someone about it. So when we go to this meeting, we all bring up these things. And we all have these friends who are complaining to us. And then we say, why is this being done? Whatever. And we're all almost always on the same page, just so you know, including Daniel. I don't ever remember having an argument with Daniel where I'm saying, hey, I don't think this is good. And Daniel's saying, no, it is good. Like you were kind of saying, Daniel's trying to convince you raising the rake is good type of thing.
No, he's not. He that is actually what he does try to do. That's what he tries to do to the people out there.
Well, he might, but I think it's more he's using the talking points. We get emails where say it's really more that they're not catering to winning players. And they're saying that, hey, if we change things around like this, the recreational players last longer. And then they're trying to sell the winning players on that's good for you if we keep them in money longer. Which reminds me, I had this discussion with Esai back in the day where he's saying, I would always give him advice because I'm from the live poker world of what he should be doing. And I used to have a list of 10 things that I wanted changed. And what would happen is they would stay on my list until either A, they got changed and I won the battle, or B, it was clear I'm not going to win. And then I just knock it off the list. So I remember one of the things he said, well, how can we're losing some of our players that the people like to play with and it's hurting our games. What can we do? So this is even before he left the company. And I said, just treat them like they're props. I said, one of the things I don't like in the live casinos, a lot of the people were props, which means they get paid $25 or $35 an hour to help create games. But in the California casinos, a lot of them are winning players too, most of them. And I always said, pay the losing players to be props. But one of the problems is a lot of times they can't stay in money. So I told Esai, this is what I would do. I would just send those guys, like let's say they're playing a $1,000 buying game. The guy loses on average $5,000 to $10,000 a month. I just ship him $5,000 a month into his account, make sure he can keep playing. And tell the guy, it's whatever. He's a good player for the side. You don't have to call him come up with a positive way to say he gets extra, he's a valuable game starter. Call him a game starter. I used a word. It might have been that. Call the game starters, give them money. And I say, like Guy Lalibardi, he's playing on PokerStars on Full Tilt. They get those big games, bring them over to our place, pay Guy, if you have to, if we're making money off it, $50,000 a month, I don't care. Give them credit, whatever. They had the bigger games that we didn't have because they all had stock and they all had better situations. They were getting the big, but I just said, take the people who play a lot on your site and lose money and make sure you take care of them. And that's my way. I do it in live casino too. All those people, I would make sure they are taken care of. I would pay them to stay in my casino because that's where the games are. My whole life, you have people, and again, in my book, I call them catalysts. They're not all losing players, actually. They're usually action players, people that people want to play with. Most of the time, they're losing. They're business people who lose money. It's true. But make sure your action, your catalyst, your live ones, whatever you want to call them, make sure you take care of them. If you have to pay them more than anyone in your place, pay those people. Keep them on your site. Keep them in your card room. That's my advice. And it never got to that, but I still think I'm right. And so what they've done instead in PokerStars, and again, this is according to emails they're sending me and Daniel and some other people, they're trying to, let's say, redistribute the rake or redistribute things or the VIP things, whatever. So those players last longer and they're not worried about the players that you and I talk to who are the professional players. And what I say to you and other professional players is get used to it. That's just the way it is. It almost is never going to be that they're catering to you. That's just the way life is. That's the way this business is. The rakes are going to go up. Situations may get tougher. You got to learn what you have to do to beat these things, to play in good situations, to play in good games. That's part of your job as a professional poker player. And there was one other thing I was going to say on that thing. So again, they send me statistics too. And I'm not going to say they're wrong because I know the people and they're honest with me. But statistics in a poker room and an online site, I don't trust those statistics a lot of times because they usually give me like year to year. They'll say the week of January or December 21st through whatever. Look at this year, look at that year. We did this change. Look what happened. But so much changes in the poker environment, the poker ecosystem, where you have different competition, different things going on. There's just a lot that changes. So I don't always believe the statistics. All I know is they told me they're raising my rake. They're raising my rake, and I'm going to complain, and I'm going to disagree, and I'm not going to like it. It's that simple, no matter what they show me. I know what I was thinking to talk about. They almost always don't cater to high-stakes players, except during the poker boom, they catered more because we became celebrities. Everyone wanted us to be there, and they had this feeling, which I think is true, that there's a trickle-down from the high-limit players. High-limit players stake or lend money to lower-limit players, and a lot of people even want to see the high-limit players, and I'd always try to convince people, we're worth it. You shouldn't be charging us rake to play in your room. And I said that one time, and they bought it. The World Series of Poker, they once came to me, I don't know if it was Jack Ethel or probably his boss, said, we want to get the big game at the Rio. What do we have to do? And I just stuck something out that I thought there's no way they're going to do. I said, no rake was the first thing. And make sure we all have $5,000 credit line that we can use to play poker. I figured
500.
What?
500.
500,000.
Yeah, he said 5,000.
No, 500,000. She said.
Okay.
I said, if you do that, we'll play here. I'm sure I can convince everyone to play here. I thought they'd say that's ridiculous. The next day, signed, sealed, delivered. No rake, 500,000 credit line for all of us. We could use it any way we want in blackjack. I don't know if they got nailed on that or not. I didn't nail them, but I have no idea. They might have given out credit to people who couldn't afford it. But that's what we had. And they liked it. And we had the game there, and they roped it off, and people come and see it like we're a bunch of monkeys in a cage, as Doyle calls that situation. But it was, I think it was worth it to them. As winning players are valuable to casinos, as I told you before, and valuable to online sites because they help the games go. And I don't think they get the credit or benefits they deserve. But right now, people usually don't care about catering the online players. They look at them a bunch of prima donnas because online players do usually complain more than the recreational players and the lower level players. So they don't cater. So you should just assume no one's catering to you. No one's taking care of you. And that's just life in the poker world. That's just how it is. And just, just take it. Yeah, they probably aren't doing you any favors. And they probably don't, casinos just as a group don't like people winning money in the casino. They like people losing. They like at blackjack. If you're a winning player, they bar you. And a lot of people they bar aren't even winning players. If they think you might be a winning player, they bar you. And that's just the way they've run their places. They don't want anyone to win. They want to get all the money.
I mean, I guess PokerStars is now becoming a casino, so they want to probably get rid of winning poker players, or they want to get rid of winning players in general, which is something that they've said over time. And I mean, it's unfortunate that it used to not be that way, and used to be able to. They used to. I mean, I don't know if they liked it, but they made billions of dollars by allowing players to win and also lose on the site. And now it seems like they just want to eliminate the winning altogether and make it all where they win all the money. So, well, I mean, in terms of, like you said, like, oh, people should just take it. I mean, I think that if you just take everything that happens, it's going to end up.
No, you should
overall.
No, maybe take is the wrong thing. You should complain about it and try to get a better deal, and try to get them not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But you should expect that this is going to happen. That's all. I know that what the rake is this year. I know in 2 years they're going to raise the rake. I'm talking about live poker I play. They're going to have some excuse, and we have nowhere else to go, and we're going to play. That's just the way it is. And hopefully I can still beat the rake when it gets increased again.
Mm-hmm.
No, take it maybe isn't the right word. But again, I assume I know I got an email today from PokerStars that they acquired Sky Gaming, and now they're the biggest.
Sky bet $4 point something billion.
And the thing I don't know. If I wasn't supposed to say this, I apologize to Eric Kohlreiser, who sent me the email, where they broke down what percent of PokerStars is now poker versus casino versus other stuff. The only number I looked at was poker, and I think it was 33%. So a third of it is poker right now, which for poker players, probably that shouldn't make you happy because, again, it means they're going to have less reason to cater to you if you're a winning poker player. But
I mean, that's been their plan all along. That's when they bought the company. It was 100% poker, and their plan from the beginning was to make it not 100% poker. So they're definitely on the path. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I imagine that I don't really know what poker looks like on PokerStars in a couple of years. And there are some other people in the industry, other sites in the industry potentially in the works. And there's fucking a million cryptocurrency sites that are out there right now, it seems like. So I don't know where things are going to go, but yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that PokerStars is going to be casino stars. Obviously, it'll be great for business. They're going to make billions of dollars. But yeah, it's just unfortunate for the poker world that's taking place.
Well, there are three. Let me give you these three groups of poker players. I think there are three. Professional players make money playing poker. There's the middle group, which are people who thought they were going to make money playing poker, but they really don't. But they're playing on it. If you ask them why they're playing, they think they're playing to make money, and they aren't. They just don't. And then you have recreational players. And so, like, I had a guy come up to me in the casino yesterday, as a matter of fact. He asked me about what I'll call a gray site, these sites that operate in the United States that are smaller, and asked me. And I said, well, I don't play on it. I represent PokerStars. Can't play PokerStars in the United States. He settles up with an agent. And then I said, I heard about that site. The rake is pretty high. It's 5% of the pot. That sounds really high to me. And so, I would never play on it even if I could. The rake is too high. I said, so I really think it's hard for you to make money on that site. Because that's what I think of when I talk about poker. How do you make money? And he said, oh, I'm not worried about that. I'm just asking you, is it legitimate? And I said, well, I don't know if it's legitimate or not. I don't know the people running it. But his reason for playing online is totally different than mine and yours. His is for the entertainment. And actually, an overwhelming number of the customers on PokerStars is for entertainment. Your bread and butter player on PokerStars maybe puts $100 on his account or a few hundred on his account, and he wants to just play some tournaments, play some poker, maybe even up to 1,000. It's his recreational thing to do.
But do you think he plays because he thinks he actually has a chance to win money at some point in time? Because I mean, you've been led to believe that you could potentially win money, or do you think he just plays because, like any other game out there, where people have a dream they might win money, but they most likely know they're not going to win money?
Well, this guy, I think this guy's a doctor by trade, clearly is doing it for fun. He enjoys playing poker, and he wants to be able to play poker at his home, in the privacy of his own home, which a lot of people do. So he is that's what he is, a recreational player. I remember one time when I was younger, I was in a poker game where I was playing a lot of people who definitely do not make money playing poker. And I had that thought just like you. I made a lot of money playing poker in those days, and I wondered why other people played poker. And I kind of secretly, one at a time, asked each of them, hey, why do you play in this game? One guy worked the railroads, one guy was a farmer, one guy's, they had different professions. And I, one by one, asked them, I was still in graduate school, so I was in my 20s. I was wondering what they would say. I asked 8 or 9 people. Everyone gave me the exact same answer. You know what that answer was?
For fun?
I play to make money. I play because I'm trying to make money. They all thought they're all bad players, like they were my fit, losing players, people I would beat. They all in their mind were good poker players who were playing to make money. They came here just like I did. They showed up because they were trying to make $1,000 or $2,000. And that was their thought. So yeah, people overevaluate how good they are at poker, and they always think other people are bad to a large extent. So much. I think you were talking to Sasha about everyone thinks they're the best player. I have always thought I had a pretty good idea. I know when I was playing with some of the younger players, we used to have this thing, Sorrell, Mizzy, and some of these guys, before each tournament, they would draft teams. They call it drafting. I think they still call it drafting. And we would have side bets on different teams. And we would have a draft where, you would have 20 people who are going to play and maybe 4 teams of 5 players each. And then people would even maybe bet on the teams. And so we used to do that before every WPT. And I remember one time, almost all of them would pick themselves first if they were drafting. I remember Justin Bonemo was there. He, of course, always drafted himself first, and Sorrell and whatever. And I remember Sorrell, they had a side bet of the pool, and I think there were 20 players, and they asked me, where do you rank yourself? And this is a time where, I was still a pretty good tournament player. And I said, well, if I was betting, and I didn't know they had a bet on it. I said, well, these are all pretty good players. I don't know, 10th to 15th, probably. There were some really good players in this group, Some player I really respected as really good tournament players. And they couldn't believe I said that. And Sorrell bet I would say I was the best. And someone else said I'd say I was top 3 or 4. And it was like a total shock to them that I ranked myself below average of these groups. There's some really, what's his name? I think is real good. Tom Marchese.
Yeah.
And there was Isaac Barron.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some of these people who are really, really good tournament players, And with me, in the end, I go by results. If you have problems with your ego on this, I think I'm a good poker player, right? But if you see someone getting better results than you, and you're still ranking yourself better than them, you may have an ego problem. And if you have an ego problem and you have a hard time telling yourself that Joe so-and-so is better than you, I've got a way you can soothe your ego. In tournaments, you can always say, maybe he's better at beating bad players than I am. You can always kind of use that as an out. Or maybe he's a more volatile player than I am, which can be important in tournaments and builds his stack and does well. You can always find a way to maybe soothe your ego and say, I'm better at this other form of poker. Like, I think I'm really good at cash game poker and like management, as you heard me talk. So I can easily, without hurting my own ego, say that there are all these guys play tournaments better than I do, even if I have an ego about myself as a poker player. So I had no problem saying, no, I wouldn't draft myself in the top half. And it just, to these guys who at the time were probably 22, 23 years old, they'd never heard a top player. I don't know if they'd ever heard a top player not say he's better than everyone. It's like you said, they all think they're the best player. And even one of the things that I know I say to my book, the idea of a best player is such a ridiculous concept anyway, because we don't always play our A game. So many people grade themselves as a player by their best play, by when they were on their A game, when they were winning, when they made a really good bluff. That's who they think they are. They don't grade it on when they called down like an idiot and should have known that that guy wasn't bluffing, when they were tired and played for 3 days and everybody was taking turns taking them off and using them as their, I don't swear, but that bitch is okay. Using that, which we've seen even good players just get taken off on day 2. And Gus has had that happen to him, of course, too, even though I told you, David Benjamin has had it happen to him, where they end up playing the best players at each form of poker, where they've been up over 24 hours. Well, it's not going to be a pretty sight at the end, no matter how good you are, if that's the way you manage yourself. And so don't just rate yourself based on your A game and when you're playing your best and when you've done your best. You better take a look at the big picture. And the big picture has to be by results. Even if results are not totally perfect, if people do better than you, quit saying you're better than them and they're luckier than you or something else. They do better than you, rate them better than you. It's real simple. In football, they always used to have an expression. Bill Parcells, I think, started it. If I may be wrong. You are your record. Don't keep saying we're the best 3-16 in the NFL. You're 3-16. That's who you are. And I think it would do most people good in poker to have the same view. You are your record.
Kind of interesting thing. I guess it comes down to the better player. If you think that the better player equals who's making money, then that's one way to look at it. I think some players out there kind of look at it as the better player by, well, I'm playing against tougher players, and I'm competing against them, therefore I'm a better player than you. You're competing in bad games.
There's that. It's all relative.
Right.
Which is, again, where people will say, who's a good poker player? And again, it's all relative. It's just like we were talking about open face. There are different levels of play. Of course, if you're holding your own against the top players in the world, you got to be a pretty good player. So there's no question that the people at the top levels who are professional players are really good players to be able to play against other top players. So no, I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is people playing in the same environment.
Okay.
And always saying they're better than other people who do better than them, which we have.
They sound like a fucking idiot. Okay. Well, okay. If that's the environment, those people sound like they're pretty.
But that is normal.
Oh,
you
man.
can actually get a poker game. I'm sure you could have 9 guys sit at a poker game and have a closed vote and say, who is the best player in this game? I am very confident that there are many poker games out there where all 9 choose themselves. Okay. You agree with that or not?
Yes. I think that's for sure that yes.
Okay. So that's all I'm trying to say, that in the same environment, people find a way to say that they're better than they really are. And you should say,
that's what makes poker so great, though, is because you can have that and actually believe it. You can have that Phil Hellmuth irrational belief in yourself, and because you won 2 times. That's why people keep coming back to play, and that's one of the reasons why people enjoy playing. That's kind of one of the things that makes poker what it is. And
okay, let me put my Phil Hellmuth mask on right now and look at you, Joe, and say exactly what Phil Hellmuth would say to you. How many bracelets have you won?
Listen, I think Phil Hellmuth's one of the greatest poker players in the world. I'm not going to argue with that, man.
I told you. He's obviously done some good things at tournaments. Don't take that away from him. Even if you see a play that he makes that you don't like, he probably makes some other plays that you don't like, and he's right and you're wrong too. So you just have to.
What I was kind of speaking of there was that every time, before I had Phil on the podcast, I'd hear his stick, and I'm like, man, this guy's like, is this guy fucking kidding around? Like, he's got to be joking around. He's like, I'm the fucking great. I'm like, this guy, there's no way this is real. There's no way this guy can believe he's the greatest and all this stuff. And then I had him on the podcast, and I was like, oh no, he 100% believes this stuff that he's saying. He believes it about himself. He has this ignorant self-belief, self-confidence about things. And I'm not going to argue with him. Okay, he has that, but he actually believes all these things that he's been saying for these many years. And I never really understood where he's coming from with his entire thing until I had him on. I was like, damn, okay.
It's actually only 90%. I know Phil better than you. And here's what it is. The other 10%, he told me, and I believe that he went to a sports psychologist a couple times. And he uses this stuff to pump himself up too.
Right.
So it's not the 100%. It's only 90. The other 10 is he thinks it helps him. and he wants to pump himself up, and it's like Rocky running up the steps. And I remember he even told me this one time. He went to the sports psychologist, and the guy was even talking about golf, and he was saying a good golfer. Now, I never blame my equipment. If I'm playing bad, it's always me. Like people say, well, do you like your clubs? I say, yeah, they're fine. I hit a bad shot because I hit a bad shot. By the way, I got my clubs bent and fixed, and now I'm better than I was. So my equipment was a little off, but that's another story. But anyway, but I'll never blame my equipment. I never have. I've never thrown a golf club in my life, okay? Or been upset at my equipment. But Phil said, and it was a shock to me when he said it, and I've heard it since, good golfers blame their equipment, and they blame their putter, that they never blame themselves. I don't know if that's true or not, but he took to that. He never will blame himself. And he got this from a sports psychologist that basically said, the idea is blame your environment. Never lose confidence in yourself, was what this guy told him, apparently. And obviously we see in spades that Phil's taken that to heart.
He really has, for sure. I mean, anytime somebody calls a race with the Queen 10, he called him with Queen 10, he called him with Queen Jack, he called him with 8-9, he called him with those type of hands. So it's yeah, he definitely does do that. He still does that now too, even. That's pretty interesting. Do you do that for yourself? When you play, are you blaming, or do you do these sorts of things to pump yourself up, or do you have anything you do to pump yourself up?
I'm more skeptical. I'm critiquing myself all the time, and saying, hey, you didn't do that. Again, I always used to say, anyone, like Phil used to say, he plays perfect poker. And what I used to say in rebuttal, anyone who tells you they play perfect poker means they don't know how diverse the things you can do in poker are. There's so many things you can do, whether it's not just the play of the hand, but the read of what someone's doing, the hesitations, all these kind of things, what's going on. There's so much richness to the game of poker that only someone who doesn't know the richness could make that statement. Mm-hmm. I know every hand, especially in big bet games where there's so much variance in what you could do. There's so much that you could do differently. And there's so much later that I could question on how I could have done it better, that I may never think not only do I not play perfect, I may think every single hand I play badly in some way, or that I could have had a better thought and known something else going on. You know what I'm saying? I'm really critical of myself that way. So no, I never, ever thought I play anything close to perfect poker, or, like good to me is relative. If you ask me, do I play well? I play better than some of the people I'm playing with. That's the best I could give you. Mm-hmm. A perfect player is many, many levels beyond what I could be, because there's so much richness going on and so much even feeling of everything in the environment going on around you. So no, not even close. So I would never on an absolute scale. So again, it's another reason to make it easier on my ego. In an absolute sense, no, there's a lot of good poker beyond where I am and always has been. And so you made me think of something. You know how I'm easily able to say I see ways I don't play as well as I've gotten older. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of curious about these people who say that they're really good. What's going to be happening as they get older, and how they're going to be criticizing their game. And I think they're still going to be saying they play better than every young player and whatever, which obviously is illogical. It's, by the way, just as illogical, and I think I said this on your last show, of these 21-year-old kids who were telling me how great they were, and me telling them they actually don't play as well as they think. And me trying to convince them, talk to me when you're 25. And if you tell me when you're 25, you haven't improved in those last 4 years, and you were as great as you thought you were at 21, then I still won't believe you, but at least I'll know you believe you. And I think 100% of them realized by the time they were 25, they were better players, that there was more to learn. There were more things going on than they originally thought. And you do get better from 21 to 25. And just the same, you get worse from 60 to 65. It's just the way it is. You can learn things. And like I say, I still have techniques. I still have things I'm doing. Oh, one of the hands we talked about last time, and I'd have thought about that, was, and I don't know if I explained it really well, the hand against Kenneth James in the Raz tournament. Let me just tell you let me just tell for people who don't play lowball what went on without naming a poker game. It was a situation where I was bluffing, and by the time we got to the river, I knew he was going to call me. and I gave up on the hand. I was giving up. In my mind, I said, okay, if I bet here, I'm getting called and I'm going to lose. So I checked, ready for him to check and lose the pot. But what happened is he had an idea that he now knew he had the best hand, and he made a thin value bet. But when I was younger, even though I hadn't planned on it, and all good players, you're a good enough player, I'm sure you've done this too. When you see that thin value bet, you say, I'm going to punish this guy for that thin value bet. Because I think he's not going to be able to realize that I had given up. Now he gave me an opening to check, raise, bluff him, and I'm going to take him off his hand. I'm going to punish him for trying to thin value bet me. And some people, you can do it against more than other people.
Right.
I used to have one guy who thin value bet all the time. I would raise him 100% of the time when I knew he was thin value betting, because I just said, until he's calling me down, if I ever am sure he's thin value betting, he is getting raised. And it worked. I mean, I might have beat this guy 10 hands in a row doing that. And I'm just saying the same thing with Ken, where I knew I was getting thin value bet. So I check, raise, bluff. I could think quickly enough. If that same situation happened today, which it has, I probably would dog it because I'd given up on the hand. I hadn't thought of the check raise. I didn't know I was going to get bet, and I wasn't as prepared. You know what I'm saying? So I would lose that pot today that I would have won 15 years ago in some of these situations. Now, except for one situation or one caveat, which is because I know of these tricks and plays and things, sometimes I have to prepare them ahead of time. So people who've watched high stakes poker, the Kenneth James story reminded me of a hand I played against Bill Klein. I think Bill Klein was a real nice guy, and Vanessa Self for a hand where I knew what was going on in the hand. I think there were 2 flush draws up. We both had them. And I knew like what the strengths of the hands were. And Bill, I think, made top pair on the river or something. And we had checked to him. Well, I was before it even happened, I said, if that card paired him, if he tries to make a value bet here, he's getting raised. So I, like before he bet, and this is where experience comes in versus reaction time. Because I do have experience with these plays, I was ready in case that came up. So I, in tempo, check, raise, bluffed him, and won. I raised 100,000, I think, and took the pot down. And then people later said, oh, it worked because he's not a professional player. But no, the real reason it worked, and probably would have worked against, not because it works against professional players too, being prepared and being ready with these plays, with these situations. I have to be more prepared as an older player than a younger player. Younger player, I just process it all in real time. Older player, know the play, know this might happen, be ready ahead of time. And it also, I lost my train of thought. There was another time. Oh, here's what it reminded me of. Chip Reese. I'll give away a tidbit to people. Chip Reese's favorite bluff. Chip Reese was a pretty straightforward player. He was a good, solid limit player. He wasn't that good at the big bet games, although actually at 56-year-old when he died, he was getting better. He was improving. Doyle's just the opposite. Doyle was good at the big bet games, good no limit hold'em players. When he first wrote his book, he didn't even know limit games. He was, according to Chip, was like a losing limit player. He learned them while he was writing his first book. And then Doyle became good at those games. So he learned them later in life. Chip is just the reverse. Chip came in as a limit player, a stud player, and then learned big bet games. And but anyway, Chip had this one, usually if Chip was there when he bet, he was a solid player. But he had this one bluff that it like worked every single time. And it was infuriating because sometimes I got taken down by it too. He had this thing, he would rarely bluff you heads up, but he had this one favorite bluff where someone bet and it looked kind of value-ish, and some guy hesitated and called where, in case the guy was bluffing, and it was a 3-handed pot. Chip would always raise in this situation. And it's kind of, the analogy is to what people call squeezing and 3-betting, is if you get 2 people in and you raise them, first of all, they have to worry about each other, but it somehow appears stronger. Even though really you're only raising against the value normally of the first person. But because you raise 2 people, it gives the appearance of he's raising 2 people, he's strong. And so Chip used to do this even in limit, where bet, thin value bet call, now Chip would raise, And each of them would kind of look at each other where neither of them were even sure if they had the better hand. He read the situation well enough where each of them didn't know if they had the other beat, and they'd invariably fold. The first guy'd say, I don't even know if I had him beat, fold. And the second guy said, I was just calling because I thought he was weak. I didn't know there was a strong hand here. I would fold. And Chip would show his bluffs more because he didn't bluff as much as a lot of us because he wasn't a big bet player. And he'd show that bluff. And I don't ever remember. That was a bluff that was like 20 for 20 in the times I played with Chip. And it's, again, a thing like when people first, now people 3-bet and look out for it. But when it first happened, if you look at my first WPT win, someone bets, someone calls, I raised because they didn't call it a 3-bet back then, but I kind of knew this concept that raising with another guy in was two things. One is it looks strong, and the second thing is there was more money in the pot to steal. That's how I always used to think. I always used to think of stealing as there's more money to steal when there's a second person in. So kind of mathematically, it's better for me. Or another situation that had come up, I see people all the time raise with a bad hand and get called. And their initial thought is, oh no, I got called. I may lose this pot. My thought, especially when I was a confident player, is more money for me. No matter how bad my hand was, I'm thinking, hey, I'm glad I'm going to bluff them out on the next street or the next street. And I'm just going to win a bigger pot. Maybe I'm an optimist or whatever, but it never bothered me that I had a bad hand and someone called me when I raised or someone called me when I 3-bet. I just thought I was going to win a bigger pot. If everyone folds, the only thing that ever scared me, like in tournaments and stuff like that, is picking up aces, kings, or queens, because I probably wasn't going to get away from them, especially if the kings and queens are beat. I knew that if I never picked up a good hand, I'm going to do well in this tournament. Probably. I'm going to steal enough to stay above water. If I pick up a hand I can't get away from, I better hope I don't lose the race or whatever it is, or I hope it's not aces against queens, I'm going down. Then they're going to get me. So, I kind of look at those things differently. And I think a lot of people who aren't as good at players are always afraid that someone called them and aren't looking at the future. I can win a better pot.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't your nickname for a while in high stakes poker like you were the continuation bet guy? Anytime something you were always 100% continuation bet or something like that?
That was before. Now people, it's funny, in those days, people heads up are like sizing up the flop and trying to like guess which flops hit their opponent. And back then, a lot of the other better players were being what they thought was smarter than me. And they weren't continuing. They were like, they always felt that they did well by checking and they were right. And the flop actually hit the guy. And then they'd say Barry would have continuation bet there and lost. And the truth is, eventually over time, I noticed those guys started continuation betting a lot more, because the fact is, especially heads up, it's not always that easy to make a flop. And you get information. And if you don't win it on the flop, sometimes you win it on the turn because now you look even stronger. That's actually, to me, it's not the flop, especially in tournaments. The flop, yeah, you're right. I'm going to continuation bet you 95% of the time. That's not even where the poker comes in for me. Where the poker really comes in for me is the next street, is judging, can I keep betting and take this guy off the hand? That's where the poker skill is, to decide after that first bet, do I have to give up because this guy's calling me down? Or do I have a reason to believe, for whatever poker sense, live tells, whatever it is, the way he called, the fact that he didn't raise me, how he plays, all these things, putting it all in an equation. Can I make him fold on the turn? The turn is critical. If you can play the turn well in a poker tournament, that's where you make your pots. That's where you make your money. Those pots are bigger that you won. It's not just taking the blinds, stealing the blinds, or winning on the flop. That's where the money's made. And if you play your next tournament, that's where you should be kind of cluing into your opponents. Who can I make fold on the turn? Not on the flop. I don't still see there's anything with being automatic on the flop, because that's kind of like the feeling out situation. It's the next street is where, to me, where the poker's played. So you got a quizzical look. You agreeing with me or disagreeing?
I'm trying to think about this in like a pot limit perspective. So everything that you say, I try to put like back into my Nolan and Hold'em perspective. I'm thinking, okay, but PLO perspective, I'm trying to think about from that standpoint. And
well, you should. And again, it's different. And PLO, again, my thoughts and PLO, there's so much more to be had. Obviously, in some sense, it's a richer game. Obviously, having the 4 cards, more hands can be made. You can represent the nuts better, obviously, in PLO than you can in Hold'em.
certain hands, people flop a flush. Don't worry about it. They're usually going broke if you have a higher flush. Not true in PLO. Often in PLO, you even have to figure out how to extract money from people on certain hands and take risks where they can draw it on you. The risks are bigger in PLO of getting drawn out, but it's still like the thing I told you about Sailor. It's still right to take those risks in a lot of situations instead of just bulldozing pot, forcing the people out. Sometimes it's right to take risks and ease people into a pot, even and make them pay to the next street. Especially, and again in PLO, the way I think about it, and again I don't know if you have the same thought I talked about in the last broadcast, is the cards coming that change the board. You always are putting someone on a hand, whether it's a draw hand, whatever. Now a card comes that either makes the straight, makes the flush, pairs the board, or is the offsuit deuce, or does nothing. And so you have your cards in that category, in those categories, and then you're saying, okay, where was this guy as far as those things are concerned, and what is my hand, and do I want to force him out now? Can I force him out now? Again, it's so I still in PLO do a lot of my thinking. Big street for me is certainly the turn, and especially in tournaments of how the board changing card, how it affected him, and what's he going to do. I mean, the easy hands are just bulldozing rundowns and aces with the double suit or whatever. Where I mean, as long as you're not deep and the pot got to a point where you can raise, some of these. I mean, again, a lot of people, as you learn, if you're real deep, you can get really tricky by just calling. With your aces, because you don't want to, especially for someone who doesn't raise enough. The last thing you want to do when you're super deep is only raise with aces and always let your opponents know that's what I've got. You're just going to be a pigeon. So obviously stack considerations end up being so huge in PLO also, probably more than no limit hold'em of what gets played on the hand. But anyway, the turn is still a huge, I think in both games, huge street as far as how you're going to manipulate people, or if you can manipulate people.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll have to tell me if I'm right or wrong, and other people can tell me.
Interesting thought. What street are people getting manipulated the most in Potman, Omaha? I guess I kind of think about playing PLO against. Oh, where'd Barry go? Oh, he's back. I kind of think about playing PLO against the better players. So I never really think about against the bad players. I mean, I think all bad players are kind of different. Some of the bad players are manipulated on turns and rivers, and some just play a call a lot pre-flop and then fold a lot of flops, or they play tight pre-flop, or they kind of, they all make their own mistakes in these different ways.
One second. Alex, I'm under 10% battery. We have a
Charger.
Charger.
We're getting a charger. I know that's a good question of PLO. What street do I think? I think it's got to be the river, but I don't know. Maybe the turn too.
I'm not even saying I'm right. Remember, I come from a hold'em background start before PLO. And so that's how, as far as big bet games, I think of hold'em and maybe no limit low ball. You think in terms of PLO, so it's different. Let me drink some. It's interesting as I watch poker players. I was originally a no limit player, didn't play limit, and almost every good player has come and not every good player has come and looked for my advice, but many have. And to name a couple, Phil Ivey and Patrick Antonius. And I remember when I was young, people who were really young, meaning 30, in my best interest, telling me how, you can't win playing like that. You're much too loose. You're getting in with these bad hands. You're just going to lose playing those kind of hands. And by the way, I was, normally the best winner and the biggest winner in the game. And they were thinking for me, okay? And the funniest thing, and I've noticed this with good players almost all the time, good big bet players, almost every one of them start loose, aggressive, trying to bluff every pot, and then kind of tone it down and realize who you can run over, who you can't, what situations are right and what situations aren't. But they normally start from that end. You don't see people starting like limit players, again, which is why Chip had trouble transitioning. Starting limit, which is more value and more solid, it's much harder to transition to, manipulating people. So I had to tell this to Phil. I remember one time where Phil saying, everyone says I'm a bad player. And I think I'm a pretty good player. And I'll say, yeah, I went through that too. And then I saw Phil transition to where he got to where he could manipulate people so well, where he would know when they were going to call him down. And you might say then they started calling him down, so he adjusted and he stopped bluffing them. But he was even better than that. He was really ahead of the curve and saying, I know this guy's ready. I've been bluffing him. I know he's ready to start calling me, so I'm going to stop. And now I haven't bluffed him, and he's seen that a couple of times, and now he's ready to fold. And Phil was, in my view, the best at doing it. That's one of his really good skills. Maybe hand selection wasn't, but that's such a big skill to have. And it's like an argument we used to have. I'd say, you're so good at some of these things you do, you get away with some of the bad things. And he'd always argue. He never liked to hear that. But it's really funny. Patrick initially was playing tournaments. I didn't know who he was, but my son Joe played tournaments. I didn't really play tournaments. And he told me this kid, Patrick, is just killing people, and played at Joey's table. He busted Joey in a tournament. And Joey had been doing well. And he told me, this guy's a beast, before I ever knew who Patrick was. And then it turns out Patrick was always also winning online on the European sites. I think I played on one of them, and I think he beat me too, by the way. I can't remember if it was him or someone else. And it was weird. They figured out who I was. I bought in on this European site, and my name was Fish54. Okay?
Okay.
And I started winning right away. I bought in for like 2,000. I ran it up to a lot, 50, 100,000, whatever. And then I started playing the big players. And somebody, it might have been Patrick's account, might have been. I can't even remember who. I didn't know who it was at the time. But those guys in the chat are so sharp. When I was winning, they were guessing who it was. And I didn't even play online poker. And then someone said, it has to be Barry Greenstein. There's like no way anyone could know. And then they said, we looked at good poker players born in 1954, which is when I was born. And the guy reverse engineered and figured out it was me. I thought that was pretty incredible, pretty good CSI detecting.
Wow.
No.
Actually, they said it was one of two people, me and David Elliott. Devilfish was also born in 1954.
Right.
But they decided not. It was no limit hold'em. Devilfish couldn't have beat it.
To be fair, sometimes when people show up and play high stakes PLO, we always guess who they might be, and your name comes up too. So I mean, hey, I don't know, maybe.
If it was high stakes PLO, I'd be the guy losing against the top, not the guy winning.
It's like a joke. We're like, oh, who is that? Oh, that must be Robert Williamson, or that must be the Godfather of Omaha, Robert Williamson III. Right. Let me ask you, Barry, was Robert Williamson ever the Godfather of PLO? Like, why? How did he get the nickname the Godfather of Omaha? Because that's always confused me to this day.
I thought you asked me that on the last podcast.
Did I? Well, I don't remember if I did, because I've been thinking about this in my mind again.
If I'm repeating myself, that counter goes up once. They used to play PLO tournaments with rebuys, and Robert had the strategy of really aggressive at the beginning, and if you lose, rebuy, and he get in a lot of rebuys, and that strategy can really. And I'm not even trying to disparage his PLO game. He's a decent PLO player, but if you're playing that aggressive rebuy strategy, you have a better chance of getting a hold of chips than if you're trying to play on one or two bullets. And as a matter of fact, the reason people don't even know the reason that we stopped doing rebuy tournaments. Well, they think it's because we actually put out media type stuff that was different than the truth. We put out, we think it's fairer as a tournament thing, that people with more money don't have an advantage over people with less money, make it more of a competition. We put stuff like that out, okay, which is somewhat true, right? But the real thing that happened is they started getting these PLO and no limit hold'em rebuy tournaments where the table would agree they're all going in the dark. And some of these guys were even being staked and using other people's money. We were getting people getting in 20, 30, 40 rebuys, but we had one tournament where one table, it was 1,000 buy-in, and at the end of the level, the average chips, at the end of the rebuy period, the average chip is 2,000 or 3,000. This is when it's 1-to-1 on tournaments. You get 1,000 chips for $1,000. Mm-hmm. And one table had like 3 guys with 40,000, another guy with 20,000, where they wouldn't always maybe go all in the dark, but like the last few would agree on it. And some people go in groups and agree on it. And it ended up being a kind of collusion. And so of course, the guys who came in first and second in that tournament came off that table. started with 40,000, where everyone else has 3,000 and 4,000. And so I complained in the meeting, and some other people agreed with me. And a couple of these guys are even being staked by some really well-off people. I said, I don't even think that's right. I don't think that's good for the competition. That some people, because they're being staked, just are fired, and some people on their own money. In all fair, didn't mind as much with Daniel, because Daniel got in 48 buy-ins in one of the tournaments, but it was legitimate because he was going all in every hand, but he wasn't colluding to go all in, if you know what I mean. He didn't have agreements with other people in the dark. We're going all in. He just was firing it up, going all in, and he was spending his own money. So in some sense, you can say he was good for the tournament. People didn't want him not to do that because he's pumping up the prize pool, and he pumped up some other people, and he wasn't colluding. So I don't have a problem if people are doing it on their own, but I think it's not fair if two people agree, we're going to keep rebuying, we're going all in against each other. So we'll get big stacks. I think there's something, as far as the competition of the tournament, I think there's something wrong with that.
48 rebuys, huh?
I think that's the number. You can ask him if you ever get him on your show.
I've had him on the show, had Dan on the show a few times. I don't remember hearing 48 rebuys. That seems absurd, but I mean, I guess I could see it. He was always running around yelling about rebuying, I think, in some of those old episodes. So.
Well, and another thing, and again, in fairness to him, he often had side bets too, bracelet bets and things like that. So if you have those bets and they're big enough, then it might even be a good strategy.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't know. I've never thought about much rebuy tournament strategy. I know they have a PLO World Series Poker rebuy event they added last year. So
okay, so maybe you'll play it this year, and then
I played it last year. That was I cashed that one somehow. But
how many bullets?
One bullet. One time. They were so bad. I mean, listen, these guys were fucking terrible. I mean, I don't know where these guys. Whatever is what it is, but yeah, you know.
Well, it's every year. Like I play obviously with good players mostly, and invariably I'll have someone say, "Hey, those tournaments. Do you think I should go to the World Series and play the tournaments?" And I always say, the tournament players are pretty bad, especially at the World Series. You get a lot of people who are learning the game. They're really not very good. I remember this one friend of mine. He was in the same math, like 15 years behind me in the same combinatorial number theory. We went through the same PhD program. His name is Dennis Eichhorn, which you probably don't know. But Dennis asked me a couple years in a row, and he said, should I go to the World Series and play tournaments? I said, yes, you'll really be surprised. He said, no, I don't like tournaments, pretty tough. Finally, like 2 or 3 years ago, he went. He said, boy, did I screw up. They're terrible. I can't believe how bad they play. And now he loves tournaments. He plays in small tournaments, big tournaments at the Commerce. I saw him bring a trophy home. He won one this year at the Commerce. He loves it. And, tournament player, if you're a winning cash game player, as I think Bobby Hoff was the one who said, before I ever played tournaments, he says, you're going to want to take them on a private cruise, just you and tournament players. This is when they're real bad. If you could get them on a slow boat, that'd be the perfect setup. They're bad. They're better now, but they're still bad. If you're a good player.
That's always my takeaway is like when I go play tournaments, I'm like, all right, people always say these guys are bad. I'm like, all right, keep that bad. And then I go play. I'm like, fuck, man. I don't like. Yeah, I don't know. It's another. I don't know.
But there are skills. There are other skills. Like an example is tournament skills, stack sizes. Those are really critical skills to know what to do with the different stack size. You take a guy like Chris Ferguson. He hardly plays any poker. I remember when he first played like the deuce to 7 no limit. He was at my table. He hardly knew how to play the game. I won that year. He came in second, just on tournament smarts and staying out of the way and things like that. So here's a guy just on tournament strategy. I wouldn't even call him. I almost don't even call him a poker player, even though the guy's done some things in poker. But he's really a good strategist or whatever, something. He knows what he's doing clearly. He did this thing last year where he came in at the last level, the last point. He entered every tournament late. He was trying to set the record for number of cashes. The later you enter, it increases the likelihood that you will cash, but it decreases the likelihood that you'll win because you don't get your stack built up. Somebody did a study on this, but by coming in late, you will cash a higher percentage of the time. He did. He set the record. I think he cashed like 17 times or something.
Interesting. So I guess what do you think about Chris kind of coming back to the poker world after what happened with Phil Tilt and the way he's received in the poker world and the amount of hatred and things that people say to Chris. What do you kind of think about that whole situation?
Well, it's a really weird thing. A lot of things happen with Full Tilt that are misunderstood outside of them not giving the players back their money, and they got a lot of money, which isn't misunderstood. But how that whole thing went down is usually inaccurate. And I saw a question someone had, I think it was on Twitter, and someone asked, what's the best opportunities you've gotten out of poker? And I was thinking, actually, I've hired people out of poker, like to do different things. But I was thinking for a while, did I ever get an opportunity out of poker? And then I remembered, you know who Bob Bright is?
Yeah.
He plays on some of the television. The first day he met me, he said, I will give you $1 million if you'll use that to trade and work for me. And I was doing well poker. I had no interest. And I said, no, but I'm sure there are people who would do it. But I said, no. And the guy just met me. And he had this idea that, you know, the poker skills translate to, I think it was stock options trading. And so anyway, so no, you know, I had no interest. But I know two guys who did take him up. Chris Ferguson, and this is before Full Tilt, and Bill Chen. I think both took him up. They both have, Bill's got a PhD in math. Chris has a PhD in computer science. And they were trading for him. I assume they did well. I don't know, but I'm assuming they did well. The market went up during well, usually for options trading means you want volatility, but whatever. I think they did well. But what happened was Chris got involved maybe with someone doing software. I don't know how Full Tilt started, but he had this idea, get a bunch of pros, and he was doing this thing with they were going to start Full Tilt. They asked me to be, this is before I was with Poker Stars. They saved 1% of stock for me in case I'd join them, but I had no interest. Phil used to ask me all the time to go with him. Phil was kind of not a top player yet, you know, not top level yet, but he had a good name because he was on TV already. And he kept asking me to join, and Howard asked me to join. And I remember they said they held out 1% of stock for me and for Gus. I remember him saying that. But whatever, I didn't. You're right, Alex. I said whatever again. But anyway, so what happens is he, as far as I know, met some guy doing the trading named Ray Bitar while he was doing the stuff for Bob Bright. And they became friends and traded together. And Chris probably, you know, told him about this Full Tilt thing, and Ray was interested and wanted to get involved. And so Chris and, you know who the Full Tilt pros all are. And Ray Bitar kind of got a job managing. I think the first time I saw him, he had a brother too, and I get the confused. But I remember they were handing out patches to people at tournaments and stuff like that. Not a very high level thing, but he was involved. But what happened is, as time went on, they were making a lot of money. And I'm going to guess a number, 3 years before Full Tilt went down. So what did Full Tilt go down in 2012? Is that?
2011.
Okay. So probably around 2008. Chris, who was the major shareholder, they didn't like, Chris was doing charity stuff in Africa and doing other things with his money. And Chris, he may have still been living in his parents' basement, didn't spend much money. Same, you see what he wears, same jacket, same cowboy hat. He was not a spendthrift, but he was doing some good things with his money. And I like Chris, by the way. Thought he was a good guy. And I remember he went to like some Full Tilt meeting. They'd have I don't know how often, because I was now with Poker Stars. And they basically told Chris, they weren't interested in hearing his opinion in one way or another. I think, Howard or other people said, you show up once in a while, we got this thing going, you got your 25% or whatever it is, we don't care. And Chris just went off and was doing charity missions. Howard and other guys were running the show. Ray Bitar's moved up in the company. And remind me to tell you a Ray Bitar, Phil Ivey story that's pretty good, now that I think about it.
Okay.
And so they're going all over the world. And what happened with a year or two before the company went under, Howard now had made enough money that with his stock and with what he's made, he didn't want to keep working that hard. And he left and passed it on. And Ray now moved up to a management position. Okay. Now let me go back to this Phil Ivey thing. Ray wasn't that well liked by the people in the company, and they were trying to force him out. They said, where did this guy come from? He's a friend of, initially, of Chris's. Why is he doing things? And he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And he was constantly getting in fights with Esai and trying to make Full Tilt number one over Poker Stars. There were really some things that were going down with the poker shows, them fighting each other. I don't have time for all that. But one thing that I'll tell you is an interesting story that I don't know if anyone knows this story. Very, very few. I get a call from Phil Ivey. He's in Germany. They did this thing where they went around to Germany and did exhibitions of some sort. And Phil says, I'm quitting poker, or I'm quitting Full Tilt. Find out what you can get me for Poker Stars. And I think it wasn't that far before the World Series. I said, Phil, you shouldn't do that. And he said, no, I'm done with them. And I said, why? And before he told me, he said, just tell me what you can get. I'm done. And I'm coming home from Germany. And I said, before you do it, I don't even want to do this because it's really, I mean, one thing we were talking about, like I say what I want or Daniel represents himself. I think of my own brand. I have a brand. Most of the time people think of like Poker Stars brand or Full Tilt brand or these other sites brand. I have my own brand. And so I still stay true to my own brand as much as I can. And the same with Phil. I said, you're now the face pretty much of Full Tilt. If you just quit in the middle before the World Series and jump to Poker Stars, I think that's bad for your brand. I said, take some time and think about it, but don't do it now. But he said, no, call Esai, find out what'll pay me. And I did, because I didn't want to. I did actually call Esai, and Esai loved Phil, and he was all on board. And he came up with a number that Phil would accept. Big number, bigger than any of us. Even Daniel, sorry if you listen to this, bigger than Daniel. He was going to pay him a big number. Okay, so now, but I didn't tell Phil because I didn't want Phil to quit Full Tilt. I thought it was a mistake. I told Phil, wait. What had happened was they were in Germany, and Ray Bitar came up to Phil, and Full Tilt had been doing pretty well, and he said, you got to be pretty happy with all the money I've been making you. That's what he said to Phil. And Phil, who was like the face of the company, was their number one guy. When Ray Bitar said that to Phil, he got so mad that that's why he called me. He said, this guy thinks he's making me money. Well, I'm going to jump to Poker Stars, and let's see what happens to him and them when I leave. And so Phil would have, if I put that call through and let them talk to each other, he would have jumped at that point. That's how mad he was. But now we go through, jump a year further, and I'm talking to Esai, and Esai says, and all Esai cared about in those days, and all Poker Stars, you talk about what Poker Stars cares about. They care about players getting money on the site. That's like the number one thing they care about. Just people putting, how can we get people donating on the site? We were still taking some credit card payments and stuff like that, even when it was a gray area. Okay, we had lawyers and they were saying you can still do it, and there isn't a law against it. But we knew that, this party poker had already pulled out because their lawyer said you're a public company, bad things could happen. We were a private company, so we didn't have to worry about stockholders. But Esai, I used to talk to Esai a lot of times once a week, and he says, we're pulling out of the East Coast. We don't have solid payment processors. There's no way to process those payments. And maybe there's some illegal way, but Esai was still trying to do things legally. Mm-hmm. He would only do what the lawyers told him they could do because we knew we're going to get, one day there's going to be regulation. So we realized that was going to happen. He tried, if we stayed in the United States, it's because the lawyers said we were good. But the lawyers told him, if you do underhanded things here, that could come back to haunt you. Okay. And we'd already lost $10-20 million by letting people put money on with credit cards where the payment processors somehow couldn't process the stuff. Okay. I don't understand all the workings. People know more about this, probably know. There was an Australian guy who was like a middleman who ended up like turning state's evidence and blowing stuff up. I don't remember his name, but you can probably find it in the threads. He was involved somehow. But anyway, so Esai says we're pulling out. But Full Tilt didn't pull out. And the Esai on this one call said, whatever they're doing, it's bad. They're really doing something bad, that they're still taking credit card payments on the East Coast. They have to do something really sleazy. And there were even things going on, like getting involved with like banks that weren't really banks, or things that I know they're really shady things. Of course, some of the processing was you put $1,000 online on a poker site, but you get something on your credit card that said it was for
Golf clubs.
golf clubs. Yeah, something like that, where they do stuff like that too. But they were doing worse stuff than that. And Esai said, and Esai even told me, this is a year and a half, I would say, before Full Tilt got shut down. He said, something is going to happen. But I'll tell you what was going on in Ray Batar's mind. He was the one behind this. He was thinking, we'll figure out how to get the money eventually, but this is going to make us the #1 poker site. He was trying to beat PokerStars. And then what happened is they weren't able to get the money processed, and I think the number ended up being 128 million or something like that they weren't able to get the process. People were putting stuff, and people were even learning. They could like use their credit card, put 5,000 on the site. They wouldn't see it show up on their bill. Do it again. People were really gaming the situation. Ray Batar's thinking eventually we'll collect the money. And even if we lose some, we get more players, it's going to work. Meanwhile, and Howard says he didn't know anything about it. Chris says he doesn't know anything about it. I actually believe them. Phil Ivey, I know 100%, although people accuse Phil, knew nothing. All these guys knew is they're getting their what we call disbursements. Every month they're getting a check. As long as they're getting their money, which was correlated to how much stock they had, no one ever said a word, right? They're all happy with their money. Now, what happens is, and Ray Batar knew, if they ever get their checks stopped, then they're going to start asking questions. So he kept this going on, and he's draining the company. So yeah, people's money, they're dipping into people's funds to pay this stuff. All that stuff is true. But all the heat that Chris and Howard get, now Daniel's like really, really against them. And the main argument against them is, why didn't they know? Why didn't they look at the books? Why didn't they stay? If they're protecting us, why weren't they doing a better job? And I can't see anything against that argument. So it's not that they don't have fault. And the next thing is, okay, if they found out they got all this money that was coming from the players, why aren't they giving it back? Which is obviously very, very legitimate indictment. So I'm not arguing those 2 points. But the way it went down, these people, Ray Batar and hardly anyone else, maybe one accountant, as far as I know, knew the dirty stuff that was going on. And what happened? Eventually, when like Black Friday came or whatever, the whole thing blew up. Where now, they didn't have money to pay people, and it was over, and it was discovered, and then it broke into chaos. So the answer is with Chris. He did do one thing. He tried, when they were going under, they needed money to keep running. He took 14 million of his own money and lent it back to the company. Obviously, it's money that in some sense is ill-gotten gains, but he did try to help initially. And so again, you can take all that stuff yourself and process it and see how culpable you think they are and how bad a guy he is. I say hi to Chris when I see him. Of course, we all know there's a cloud over that. But anyway, that's what went down. In my own thinking, I hold Ray Batar much more guilty than any of the other people. My own way of looking at it.
Once again, nothing ever happened with any of those players as well. I think Ray Batar got excused for some sort of.
Well, I don't know how he did this thing. He said he had a heart condition and had to have a heart transplant, and bought a nice house. They all got nice houses. They all got nice. They did pay penalties, but not penalties. I mean, again, to me, like most people, the penalty should have been whatever money was ill-gotten gains you have to give back.
Right.
Doesn't that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way I think. But it didn't look like, of course, they're saying, well, we already spent it. The money doesn't exist. Sometimes the money isn't there to give back. I don't know. So, yeah, dirty stuff happened. Bad things happened. You can assign the blame however you want. But
We got to get Ray Vitar on the podcast. It sounds like, I don't know, man. I think he might be able to still incriminate himself. So maybe we shouldn't get Ray Vitar.
You know, all these people, like I said, don't make the mistake I did, which is get these guys to talk to you off the record. Get them on the record. Russ Hamilton, invite him on.
Oh man, I was actually. He was spotted yesterday, Barry, at something here, some sort of the conference that's here, and I was like, man, I kind of want to go to that conference. I know there's a 1% chance. I actually did ask Chris last year at the series. Me and Jonah was working with me at the time when I'm talking to him, and he said maybe in a few years, something like that. So I'm still gonna keep asking him. I still want to talk to all these guys. Like I don't care. Yeah, you know, they get a lot of fucked up. I still want to talk to them all for sure.
Yeah, and just say to them, tell your side of the story. You know, an honest person isn't afraid to tell his side of the story.
So why do you think they haven't said anything really? I think Howard maybe did something with Poker News, but for the most part, no one else has said anything.
Well, what happened with Howard, and again, he told his side of the story, and I think, you know, the majority of what he said, you know, gels with what I know. Okay. But nobody really wanted to hear it. Nobody, I mean, if you're someone who lost your money on that site, this is before PokerStars saved the day and paid that money back, of course. You know, when they bought out Full Tilt and settled their case. But if you're someone who lost your money on Full Tilt, you're not willing to listen to Chris or Howard or anyone else say they weren't guilty. Because even if they're telling you that, well, then where's that money that we now found out you got that Full Tilt really didn't have to give you? Until you give that money back, I agree with again, this is one of these things where you say, do you agree with the poker stars or the poker players, or do you agree with the website? How can you not agree with the poker players who lost money who are saying, well, then give me my money back. You got money. I don't have money. That money, even though you thought it was yours, it really wasn't. And even though this other guy was the one who screwed the whole thing up, you got money that was mine. I want it back. So again, any poker player who tells me that, I certainly can't disagree with them. I don't think you can either, right? You have a reason to be mad. So there is a reason to be mad at these guys. I'm not denying that. But I think there is, like, again, they didn't, all I can say is they didn't intentionally bring the site down. It was $1 billion company that they all had pieces of, and they all thought they were going to make a lot of money. Nobody's intentionally bringing $1 billion site down by stealing from their players. They just let, what I always say when if I'm telling the story, they let the janitor run the company. That's the way it ended up looking to me. And the janitor did not do a very good job. They got their money, they got out, they were all happy with their money, and they let some random guy run the company.
I mean, it's kind of crazy when you think about it, though, is that they let this guy run the company and he built it to $1 billion company. No matter how he built it, he still built it to $1 billion company.
No, they built it before he ever got in.
So he wasn't involved from that starting point when it was still when it really gained that.
He may have been handing out patches, the first time I knew. He moved up through the company as people got the money and got out. He didn't start out as like CEO or CFO. He started in the lower levels. He started out as friend of Chris. Okay, that was his initial position. Friend of Chris that was pissing some people off who were saying, why is this guy at meetings? We don't even want him here. I'm not going to name names, but the TV went off, Alex. We're watching the basketball game. But anyway, yeah, so it's a long time. I talk a long time. You know that. But anyway.
What did she just say?
He's going like this, like you're taking too long.
Oh, she's looking at her watch. You know, it's funny. I just literally looked at the time and I didn't realize it. I was like, oh, I'm just chilling. Like, I don't know.
I don't wear a watch anymore, so I don't know.
Can you tell her we could go for an easy? We could go for 24. We'd probably forget it was 24 hours, man. Like this is.
She lives with me. I think she knows that.
Yeah, she knows that.
She is on a daily basis. Oh, she doesn't have a good look on her face. She's on a daily basis. When I'm talking to her, saying, "Get your story over, okay? You want me to listen? Then finish it." So she lives with that.
Yeah, I see where she's coming from. Makes sense. I mean, I can understand.
Which reminds me, I don't even think we started the podcast yet because there wasn't a podcast. She just had this look of fear in her eyes. Because wasn't this supposed to be people asking me questions? That's why I went on. So people, you had questions.
Well, technically, what I've done is I've worked in some of the questions into follow-ups and into top. It's just like it's not as in your face. It's sort of like I just took everything that people said, put it together here, and I work it in different points of time.
Okay, she just wrote boring. Okay.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God. What the hell, man? We got to send her up with that dog in the bathroom upstairs, man. I don't know.
Okay, so she says she wants me to end this. She says get boring. She's my critic.
Damn. I don't agree. I disagree with her.
Oh, I just thought of something. 2 things for relationships. I forgot to say last thing.
Oh boy.
One is just like with Alex. You better be used to hearing. You better enjoy hearing what people have to say that you're going to end up with, or it's going to be a tough life, as Alex is showing right now. But one other thing that I think is good is switch iPods if you still have these things, or music. Make sure you like the same music. That was one thing I wanted to add in. That's a small thing.
Did you really write this down? You actually did write that down, didn't you?
Because I forgot last time, one thing I did in one of my relationships, we switched iPods, okay, with this girl. It's when Alex and I broke up for the first time. The second time is coming after today. No. Anyway, the first time. And so I ended up going out with this girl, and we had a really good idea. Switch music and see if we like it. And I get her iPod, and it's alphabetical order. And the first 10 songs are techno number 1, techno number 2, techno number 3. And I find out this is the music they play at raves. I don't know if you're too old for that stuff or if that's in your age group.
I had my year and a half in the raging scene.
I had 2 kids. I had my year and a half too, with 2 of my different kids who, did ecstasy and got in these rave things and all that. So I had to go through it as a parent. So techno was not a good thing for me. And I'm saying, but I listened to it for the first time, like 2 minutes of the first techno number 1, and I remember saying, "This is not going to work." But then she had normal songs, and I still have some of her songs on my playlist, and I give her my songs, which were obviously older, 70s and 80s, 60s even. And she said, I remember saying, "Oh, this one's okay. That one I could live with," where we basically made sure we were musically compatible. And that's one good thing with me and Alex. We're very musically compatible. She's at the beginning of the MTV generation, so she has a lot of 80s stuff when I was doing other things that we have on our joint list. But it's still good that we're musically compatible. We like the same stuff. That's a good thing for relationships. Make sure you're musically compatible. Is all I was going to say.
If the iPod for the girl or the phone's a bunch of techno and she loves to do ecstasy, and you don't like to do ecstasy,
yeah, that's probably not going to work.
Probably not going to work. I feel like we were in a story about Filto, which is a really great story, but where the hell were we at in that story? Someone in the chat, please let me know where the point we're at, that Filto story you're talking about. So you're talking about Ray Bitar, about the janitor.
Well,
I guess we kind of.
You had initially asked me, what do I think about Chris coming back to
right.
get the World Series? And like I said, I know him, and I know he didn't intentionally do this stuff and whatever. I say hi to him. That's all I can tell you.
Simple.
We don't have long discussions.
Yeah.
I certainly understand why people are mad at them.
Fucking Ray Bitar, this guy. I mean, I don't know.
Well, good. If I disparage Ray Bitar by putting most of the blame on him, go on Joe's podcast and tell me where I'm wrong.
I'm going to invite him on. I'm going to find out his contact information after this, and I'm going to reach out to him and see if he wants to come on. Because I don't know. I feel like he could say some things that he might go to jail for, though, because no one ever really went to jail. I don't know what was illegal out of that, what wasn't, but.
Well, I had some guilt, actually, in a funny way. Phil Ivey's like one of my best friends in poker, obviously. Maybe was my best friend. And Esai had told me they're going to get, this is bad. Whatever they're doing is bad. They're going to get, he had predicted it, basically. People think it was like an all of a sudden thing, but Esai, connecting the dots, kind of predicted it a year and a half in advance. And so, that they must be doing something really dirty. And here's Phil and I kind of had this understanding that we didn't talk to each other about each other's sites. You know what I'm saying? But I could have actually maybe stopped the whole thing from happening in a way if I'd have just told Phil there's bad stuff going on because we can't do this thing in Poker Stars that you were going on. You should look into this. Is there something bad going down? I probably could have gone that direction and said it, and probably it would have saved a lot of people some pain. A year and a half. I mean, I'm not blaming myself. There are obvious reasons I didn't, but in a different universe, things could have gone a different way, and it could have been stopped earlier. And again, it easily could have been stopped earlier. Like the initial blame for Howard, even more than Chris, was why didn't you look at the books? You could have seen this money was out, and so that's why you're to blame. That's why now Howard's defense, and again, this is Howard speaking, I don't know if it's true. His claim is Chris and the accountant cooked the books. They gave him false books. He did look, Howard claims he looked at the books and they were fake. And they actually hid this. So Howard claims that's why he didn't end up protecting people or didn't know to protect people. So again, that's what Howard would say because that's what he has said.
Hard to argue with that, I suppose, if you're on our side of things. But I mean, it sounds a little fucking unbelievable for the most part. So I mean,
well, no, we see it happen all at Enron. So many of these companies that were big companies that went down. I can't remember all the different big. There was a big investment firm went down. Over and over, it's the same type of thing. Money gets taken out. The books are fake. Stockholders are told things are going okay. The stocks are okay, and all of a sudden, something happens and it implodes. Obviously, Madoff is another situation.
That's definitely a situation.
No, but it's the same type of thing where as long as people are getting their money and things are going up, nobody knows what's going on behind the scenes. Stuff goes down, it implodes, and it's over. It's not like this Full Tilt's the only company that was doing shady things and it happened.
Right.
It happens in business. Business is dirtier than poker normally. A lot of there's dirty things going on.
There still are dirty things going on even this day now. So kind of is what it is in the poker world. I'm thinking about, I'm having John Duthie on the podcast on Tuesday. John Duthie is the founder of EPT, European Poker Tour, and then worked PokerStars for a while with that.
I don't mean to always correct you, but I think it's Duthie.
Oh, I'm not. I don't know. I'm not a professional name pronunciation.
I know John. I like John.
Yeah, you got any stories with John? Any experiences with him or any poker playing with him at all?
Yeah, a lot. He's a peculiar player that's done well. And sometimes you'll see this in tournaments where people that play hands differently and play differently and bet differently, and people just don't figure them out. And like some people, like maybe initially I didn't figure them out either, but then I played with them more and I knew how to exploit their weaknesses. That happens. John played in this tournament. It was the first time they ever had hole cards face up. It was called the something millions. Okay, it was in London, so it might have been called the London. I don't even know what it was. I didn't go to it. 10,000 buy-in tournament. And John played, and I think Johnny Chan told me he was at the final table. And this guy didn't appear to be as good as some of the players we know, but he made some really great reads, really great calls, really great bluffs, really good plays. Okay? And he ended up winning this thing. And the consensus from a lot of players was we're never playing with cards face up again. Something funny went on. Several players told me that. Johnny Chan, who's a very suspicious person, was one of the people who told me, Johnny, I think final table, said this guy had to know what I had or whatever, and stuff like that. And, then I met John. And the next time I met John was probably because he had started the EPT and PokerStars was starting to do things with the EPT. Nice guy. I played with him at a table, played a little strange, but he actually had some good results again, not with cards face up. So then that idea that he was doing something funny was started to go out the window, because if you get to see someone in more situations and they're still doing well, that means they're doing some good things. And John was. John had some deep runs in other tournaments where it became clear, no, he's just got some peculiarities in his play and he was making some good decisions. And John's a smart guy. Okay, so he did well. So I give 0% that John cheated in that tournament that he won, or as close as he can. I mean, you can't say zero, but you know what I'm saying. He won it fair and square. I've seen him do well in other situations, and he's a good tournament player. That's all there is to it. And it's again another one of these situations of cash game players thinking about poker one way, and maybe not giving a tournament player credit for some smart things he's doing and good things he's doing. But he built up the EPT. Eventually, he got bought out. So what I have to say about him, he's a competent tournament player.
So you can consider him more of a poker player than an entrepreneur or someone who is involved with like a business side of poker.
I don't even know where he came from. I didn't meet him till he was like CEO or whatever of EPT. That was the first time I met him. So I don't know his background. I mean, I might have. He may have told me it. He may have been in business, and he might have been a businessman who played poker. Sometimes what we have in poker are guys who are businessmen They like playing poker, and they use their business smarts to come up with something interesting about how they can do something in poker. And I think John may be that, where he came up with an idea of starting a European poker tour.
Well,
he told me, but I can't. He told me the story, but I forgot.
Well, he's president of Party Poker Live now for the last like year and a half. So he's kind of been behind the charge of Party Poker, putting on all these events and sponsoring all these players. And I mean, that's a whole nother. Do you pay attention to any of that stuff at all? With what Party Poker's been doing?
I don't know anything. I don't pay any attention to any of the. During the poker boom, I read some of the blogs or the forum stuff. But once Black Friday hit, I don't look at any of this stuff. I mean, I don't want to. I was trying to think of myself. I didn't until Sasha told me you were a friend. Again, I know you have a lot of followers now because people came up to me. I've gotten a lot of response. So you've always got a big podcast. I didn't know who you were. Okay. So if I followed that stuff, I'd probably know who you are, right? And I'm not saying that to put you down. I'm saying that to tell you how little involvement.
Yeah. What?
But actually, I realized a couple of days ago, I did know who you were.
How?
And here's how I knew who you were. I then kind of got a refresher. When we were with Poker Road, I think Poker Road was still going on. I remember someone say, "You should hear this guy." I didn't know he was Joe Ingram, Chicago Joey, right? What was your nickname?
Chicago Joey. Yeah.
Chicago. That he's this really crazy guy. And I can even tell you had 6 podcasts at the time I knew we were. They said he's done 6 podcasts, and they were numbered 1 through 6. Is that right?
Maybe. I were they? I don't know. I mean, I started with I kind of like bounced around between.
Somebody sent. I never looked at them because we had guys we like Joe Stapleton, Scott Huff. We were making our own stuff. But someone once told me, "Hey, you might want to hear this guy's podcast. He's really funny. He's really crazy. He's really got some interesting stuff." But it might have been at the time right when online sites are going down, so it all went down and it didn't matter. If stuff had stayed up, I would have probably looked at one of your podcasts. So I had heard of you as Chicago Joey, and then later Sasha told me you're a friend Joe Ingram. So I actually had heard of you some number of years ago once, and then forgot I'd heard of you. And
well,
I
think that's like a big challenge that I've personally faced. Is just most of my stuff's always been online. I've never played live tournaments and never played live anything. So kind of getting the American poker players or American audience or those people to really know who I am, the live players to know who I am, that's definitely been a challenge, since I started doing content. I've never really tried to, I guess, break that challenge or win that challenge. But yeah, I don't think it's not really surprising, especially if you don't watch poker content or if you don't go on Twitter, if you don't go on the forums. Like I think a lot of players are probably similar to you. And they're missing out though, Barry, because it's some great content being put out there, like the podcast last time I did with Barry Greenstein. So you got to tell these other guys, man. I'm telling you, they didn't enjoy it.
Maybe
I would not enjoy it if they had the chance. You know what I'm like? That's kind of how I look at it.
Okay, we might have to wrap this up. Like I said, we're getting close to breakup number 2. No, or not.
Yeah.
Anyway,
okay. We'll take one more good question from the chat, guys, and then.
If Alex says it's boring, it's probably boring.
No, it isn't. Alex she's tripping right now, Barry. I'm telling you, I'm looking at the chat. Look at what the chat said. One of the best podcasts. I don't know. I'm just reading what I'm saying here. I love this podcast. I barely noticed this 3 hours. This is one of my favorite podcasts. Tell Alex come on the podcast. We want to see. I don't know.
I don't know what this hand signal means because I've never tried to do those maritime signals, but I just got this.
Oh, that means she just wants you to stop talking about her.
But she's smiling. That
means she's happy and sad at the same time.
That means, by the way, she's a big sports fan. That's another thing we have in common. Look for shared interest. She loves basketball. Right now, we're missing the playoff game.
You missed the first game started like early this morning. So I am going back and watching an NBA replay after this.
No, then I won't. No, I watched it while we were doing this thing. I didn't miss that. I know what happened in that one. But the Portland, the second game.
I
won't tell you. I don't want to spoil it.
No spoilers.
I didn't miss it.
No spoilers. Go. Well, I guess now I'm gonna get spoiled anyway. It is what it is. All right, we'll take one more question from the chat, guys, and we're gonna wrap it up there. Who we got in the chat? Let me get some shout outs, man. Who we got out there today, man? We got a lot of people.
When you said wrap it up, I got it like this for now.
I don't mind when you answer questions.
Oh, she said she doesn't mind if I answer questions. It's just if I'm talking extemporaneously.
But you understand if I ask you a question, you're going to start talking. Okay.
Yeah. Well, she knows.
It's not going to be like, Barry, what's your favorite color? blue. It's going to be
Well,
like, well, back in 1975, I ate a burger at the store, and like there was a pickle there. It was really good, and then
no,
Johnny came in the store, and it's like, but I love the answers, but I don't know.
She's heard some of them. One of the things that she mainly does is like pulls my arm if like I'm getting interviewed or something, says, "You went off on a tangent again." She'll say, "You did it again. You're not even talking about what they asked you. You went off on a tangent." So the two things, and then like if I talk too much about myself, she'll say, "You're talking too much about yourself. You'll take yourself out of it." So which is good. It's good to have someone like that who's a filter.
Talk poker. I'm not fine with that.
Yeah, she's okay. If you have poker questions, she's good with it.
She has a very fair point, though, Doug. But she's got a fair. I mean, I personally kind of like the other stuff better than the poker stuff, but I totally get where she. We got to meet. Everyone wants to meet her too. I agree. Zachary Weatherford. Well, let me get some shout outs first. Hold on a second, man. We got my boy Jack Fleming out there. What up, Big Jack? What's happening, man? Casey Grombecker. Got a lot of regs out here. You guys are crazy. You've been here the entire time. Josh Ruiz. What up, Josh? You said some weird shit. We had to ban you, and that's okay. It happens. Glenn Misha. Brett McNary. Anthony Vickers. Big respect, Barry. Ace on the river for sure. Okay. I like that a lot. Flower Felon. What up, Flower Felon? What's happening, Poppy? Vernon D-backs. I can't ask that question. Alex Leonardo. What's up, Big Poppy? What's happening? You got some shout outs you want to give, Barry?
Not really. Alex, water. Not a Gatorade.
Our first death on the podcast here. It looks like Barry might be choking. He's told too many stories.
Let me drink. Well,
all right, 2 more questions. 1604 Worldwide says, any advice on improving your game through lifestyle or habits?
I thought we already talked about that. We talked about that in the last thing, and I don't want to be mean, but that's kind of why I wrote that book. Go get Ace on the River. It's still relevant. Go read it. It talks about all those things.
Listen, guys, if you go buy Ace on the River today, all right, go buy Ace on the River today. Show me a receipt that you bought Ace on the River. I will choose one of those people, and next time we get Barry in the podcast, I'll let you call in or be on the for a very short period of time. You get asked a question. I'll let you come on, ask a question. If you go buy the book today, show me you bought the book. Don't fucking lie to me. Show me you bought the book. I'll choose one of you guys. Okay.
By the way, it's out of print, so I don't think you can buy it on Amazon anymore. But you can.
Where the hell are they going to buy it then? Wait a second.
Well, I had some guy. I did an ebook with my Badoogie chapter. I have a second book that was like a Badoogie chapter. I wrote it for Poker Stars, and so then I told the company, "Hey, could you make my Ace on the River an ebook?" Well, the bad news is they did, or the good news is they did it. But I think the formatting gets screwed up if you don't have the right reader for it. So that's a pain in the neck.
So you just told them to buy your book, though. Wait a second, you can't buy your book anywhere.
Don't buy the book. It's just borrow it from someone else. That's what people usually do.
His answer to listen, he's getting a lot of line. His answer to the question was go buy the book, and then the book don't exist. Okay, okay.
Don't buy the book. Just you'll find someone who has it. Borrow a copy.
Okay. All right. This will be the last one. Then I'll let you guys go. Okay. Where the hell would it go? Nope, that's not it. I copied and pasted it here. Nope, that's not it. Where did it go? No. What'd you say? Which one? Oh, no, not that one. No. All right, we want to find more from the chat. I couldn't find it anymore. I'm very sorry. I copied it in my notes, and now it's lost in my entire notes, and I cannot find the specific question I had in mind. But it was a good one, though. I'll tell you that right now. Maybe Alex has a question. Alex, do you have a question for Barry?
Yeah, when is this going to be done? That's her question. So we can eat lunch and watch. It's right now the third quarter of the Portland-New Orleans game.
That's the last question. That's it. Barry, if people want to ask you something, where can they go ask you something at? If they have anything, should they send it to you on Twitter? It seems like you see everything on Twitter.
Yeah, but I'm not going to answer on Twitter. Yeah, normally what I just tell people is when I'm at the World Series, you see me walking around, don't be afraid to come up with me. I usually will talk to people, answer their questions. That's probably the one time a year where I'm out and about, you know what I mean? And so that's a good time to see me, get an order, whatever you want.
You don't ignore people, actually. Some people think you do, but it's just only because you're
I don't. Yeah, this is an important thing. I don't, and like Alex leaving a bit, I don't ignore people. I try to give them my time. I've seen, like in Old where people say that I ignored them. It's never, ever, I've never ignored anyone. I've never do that to anyone. but sometimes I'm oblivious. Some people think if I'm walking down the hallway with the Rio and they say something and I keep walking, that I ignored them. The real truth is I was probably absent-minded, thinking about something, looking at my phone, my iPad, who knows what. I really, honestly, as far as I know, have never ignored someone who said they wanted to say hi and whatever. I don't do that. So please, the next time I don't answer you and it looks like I ignore you, maybe my hearing's not as good. I don't know. It didn't happen. It wasn't intentional.
Amen. Mark Rubin says, Joey, give Barry a shout out. His book changed my life. And if you could please thank him for me, that would be excellent. Love the podcast, please.
Okay. I'm glad you're right here. I'll get a shout out. I did give shout outs last time to Klodnicki and who else?
Jesse Martin.
Good player. One guy who beats me worse than anyone in that game, but he's not a known player. Matt Simizek, I think is his last name. This guy, he's a real nice, kind of quiet guy, but I beat him 10% of the hands I play. I mean, Matt, one of the reasons sometimes I stay away from the game is I look at Matt. Marco's gotten lucky. Marco's another guy. He's a good player. I had Marco all in. I was like triple chip leader going to the final table of PL08 one time. This is only about 3-4 years ago. And when we got three-handed, I remember one of the hands I had Marco all in. He needed a 4 to chop. That's how dead he was. Anything else I scoop. A 4 he chops. He hit it. And then we got all in again, and he had almost no outs in the one. And then I got in on aces with the low against the other guy, and he doubled through me before you knew it. I came in third. Marco came in second. So Marco's done pretty well against me. He's a good player, too. But there are some guys, some tough players there. So Matt S., probably the toughest. Probably of anyone has the best record against me. So there's a shout out for Matt. He'll be at the World Series this year. Watch out for him. He's a tough player.
All right, guys. Everyone for tuned in. If you watch this live, much love. If you've been staring at my GTO's Way of Life shirt, you can buy it for 3 more days, in addition to some other stuff in the link below. And then after that, we're going for merchandise, accessories. I've always wanted to do more clothes and stuff like that because I just say a lot of weird shit, and it turns out it's pretty catchy. And we're going pretty hard on it. We're gonna make a shirt for Barry. It's gonna say I don't know what it's gonna say quite yet. It'll probably say what Barry told me before the podcast started, which had to do with pee bottles. But that'll be another story for another time.
Well, that's right. Do you sell pee bottles on your site?
I'm actually going to, yes. I'll make one specially for you. Obviously, we have regular size, and then we have Barry Greenstein size. So yeah.
This is I don't mean to be weird with this question, but do women poker players have pee bottles too?
I mean, that's a very fair question. I don't know. I
ever since I was on your first thing, every time Sasha's texted me, the pee bottle was in the text somewhere about, are you going to need a pee bottle, or it's been in her tweet. So you can ask her about that. I don't know.
I to be fair, I did try to get her to use one, and she didn't. So that is what it is.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm like curious. Can it be done? I don't really know. So
okay, I made it through the whole thing without a pee bottle again. So I got that going for me. So
nice
you
work. Maybe we need to do a bet one time where we do the pod, but whoever pees first loses or something like that. And that may be deadly podcast.
No, because you can't win as you get older. You definitely have a better advantage in that over me than you would in poker. I'll give you that.
Which poker? What poker? Pineapple?
Obviously, well, Chinese.
I'm ready to play.
Okay. Well, we can play. If you need a spot, you can tell me. As long as we're playing for money. Sasha and I play for stuff. You know that. The first
she told me. Yeah.
The first one, she gets a half point hand. The first one, and she beat me, raced to 400. I had to help her with poker if she won, which I've already fulfilled. She initially said a poker game, but I've gone far and above what she won. And the second one, I told her she had to take her mom to Target Golf in Vegas and hit golf balls and have lunch there.
Top golf, technically, but yes.
Or Top Golf, Target Golf, Top Golf. So that's what I wanted. That's not too much to ask. And she still hasn't done it. If her mother's listening, she owes you lunch. It's actually good food there. I don't even mean to endorse that place, but it is good food, and it's. I'll be out there hitting golf balls. If you want to see me when I'm not in a tournament or a cash game, I will take my clubs out to Vegas, and that's where I'll be practicing.
I cannot imagine Sasha's mom's currently listening right now. She doesn't understand probably what we're saying. So no chance she's watching this right now.
Okay, but Joe, Sasha knows my name there. Think of a bet. Preferably, it's just we play for a certain amount of point. But you'd be an underdog at that. So you can come up with something else.
Cool. I'm in. I've been playing a lot, so I'm ready. I'm ready to test myself.
Okay, good. It'll be a test. You'll get to find out where you stand.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to find out fast. All right, guys in the chat, much love, everybody. Be back Tuesday with another podcast. It'll be live Monday, new video. If you want to check out Barry, you can go to Twitter, Barry Greenstein. Sometimes he tweets things out. Most times he doesn't. If not, when you see him in LA, tell him you like the podcast. Tell him your favorite part of the podcast. And if you see him in Vegas, tell him you love, tell him something, man. Tell him you enjoy the podcast, because I think everyone always enjoys hearing that they're, what they say and the things that they say and the advice that they give is actually resonating with people out there. So
yeah, for sure. Like I told you, if I didn't get positive feedback, I wouldn't be here. But I'm always happy when someone says it made a difference, it helped them, they liked it, whatever. As soon as you guys start telling me, like Alex was, you're boring, I really don't want to hear what you have to say, or what's going to eventually happen, you guys can say, I already heard that story before, all your stuff is old, then I won't talk anymore. I have no problem not talking, but if you like it, I'll do it. So that's it. So I am out of here.
Much love, guys. Take care, Barry. Talk to you soon.
Okay, good talking to you.
All right. Peace out, everybody out there. Much love. Take care. Adios. Much love.